by 7 o'clock.
I'm going to call the special meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order on Tuesday, December 7th at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber and via Zoom teleconference, which meeting link can be found on the agenda and on the city's website. The prayer will be offered by Deputy City Clerk Allison Waite, and Alderman Tenza will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with the spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. If you are participating via Zoom, please state your presence, reason for not attending the meeting in person, and whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
I am present.
Alderman Clee.
I am here. I am home because I need to quarantine prior to surgery. My husband is in the house, but he's not in the room, and I'm listening through an earpiece, so it's not being broadcast here.
Alderwoman Kelly.
I am here.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Karen.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons. Alderman Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Tenza.
Present.
Alderwoman Lou.
Here.
Alderman Jettie. Alderman Schmidt.
Alderman Jettie arrived as you called his name.
Okay. All right. Alderman Schmidt. Alderman Laws.
I'm here. I have to watch this thing, so.
That's not fair. Poor thing. He's so cute.
Alderman Cleaver.
Present via Zoom and because of illness and mobility, and nobody is in the room with me.
Alderman Harriet Gafford.
Present.
And Alderman Wilshire.
I am here.
All right. You have 10 in attendance and 3 via Zoom.
Thank you very much. And as is customary, I will turn the public hearing, the rest of the meeting over to the chairman of the Budget Review Committee, Alderman Dowd.
Okay, this evening we have public hearings on 4 bond resolutions, R21-187, R21-189, R21-93, and R21-202. If there are no objections, I'd like to move the first item up to R21-202 up to the first, so that we can address that, since I think most of the people here are concerned with that particular legislation. So, Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before us this evening is R-21-202, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $2,500,000 to purchase property abutting Greeley Park, located at 15 Bartlett Avenue, map 57, lot 3.
Okay, I believe that Alderman Clee wants to introduce us to this legislation, has a couple of charts.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chairman Dowd. Jeff, I'm not ready yet, but this was the slides the 2 slides that I sent to you. So I want to start by answering the question that why did we make an offer? Why did we make an offer before the sellers created a purchase and sales agreement to Thorndike? The answer simply is to the best of my knowledge, it was never listed publicly, and the city's not in the habit of chasing obituaries. So at another meeting, I made a comment that this is not about NIMBY, not in my backyard. It's about saving my park. That's how I said it. Then I was commented, someone came to me and said, well, it isn't my park. It should be, rather, it's our park. And that's the truth. It is our park. Greeley is our park. It's not Ward 3's park, it is the city's park. And the thing that we have to continue to remember is that once anything happens to that park, it's probably gone forever. And I don't mean the park is gone forever, I'm just talking about the abutting area. So, it's important for us to have this discussion, consider all the options that could be possibly at our disposal. And I want to be fair here to everyone, and I want to show a couple of slides so the public can see exactly where this property lays beside Greeley Park. I joked at one point that at the map, 15 Bartlett is like a puzzle piece that kind of fits into the armpit of Greeley Park. And as you can see here, Jeff, if you can show that first slide, please. This is a slide that was shared with me from Mr. Geisinger and from Thorndike. And you can see exactly how this fits, that piece of property actually fits into it. And the reason I wanted to show this is because he also was kind enough to kind of show where he was planning on developing the area. And then he pointed out where the woodland that's abutting Greeley Park, you can see that up in the upper left-hand corner. That particular piece also has some wetland in it. And then you kind of see that mustard green, I used to call it baby poop color, is the open space. It's kind of down towards the lower portion. And that medium green is the buffer area. But that yellow portion right in the middle there is the development area. I show this because I do want to be fair. I do want to show that there are woods that are going to stay there. So when I refer to how all the woods are going to be removed and so on, there are things that are going to stay there. This is conservation land, and he does have to maintain a certain portion of non-developed land, so to speak. Jeff, if you could show the next slide. Thank you. This was given to me by a constituent who also wanted to show how that piece of property kind of fit into the whole landscape and the property that's owned by the city. So obviously Greeley Park is owned by the city. Then you see that little tiny piece of parcel of land. That too is owned by the city. So I just want to show how important it is that this piece of property fits in there. And right across, diagonally across from that owned by the city property to Greeley, much of that is forested area. So it kind of continues that forestry in that land. If you look over to the right-hand side, you can kind of see where those 43 homes are going to be spread throughout all of this. Now, I'm showing you all of these things, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the sellers did send a letter, or actually their legal office sent us a letter. Jeff, you can stop now, thank you. Stating that they plan to continue with the sale to Thorndike and continue to move forward with that. So I do want to make that very clear. The city, in my opinion, we should still continue going. We should still continue doing all that we want to do. And I showed these slides to be fair to everybody, to show where the buffer areas are to the properties, to show that little piece of woodland area that's going to be there, but also to show how this truly, truly fits into that. And once that is developed, there is no going back. You can't go, oops, made a mistake, because you can't put those trees back there. So this is extremely, extremely important. You're going to hear from a lot of people, I believe. We've been getting emails back and forth. People are saying, well, don't develop this land either. And maybe that be true, but this particular one, as you can see, is so important, my feeling, to the health of Greeley Park. And this is, well, yes, there's some people that say, not in my backyard. I know for a fact that not too long ago, there was a piece of property not too far from here that had 2 or 3 homes that they wanted to develop, and certain people stopped that because they didn't want it in their backyard. This isn't so much in my backyard as it is to save our park, the city's park, a crowning jewel of the city. And I think it's important that the conversation goes on, even though they've said they do not want to sell and they're going to move forward. I think we still need to have this conversation, because I think the safety of this park and saving this park is extraordinarily important. So from here, I'm going to pass it back to Chairman Dowd. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Okay. Just to reiterate a couple things, I did hear from the developer developer's attorney today. They are still going to honor the purchase and sale and buy the property. We did get a letter from the owners, the Barkers, saying they had no interest in selling it to the city, and that they didn't want the city to interfere with the purchase and sale agreement, which technically we can't interfere with, you know. So the sale is probably going to go through. And we may be tabling the motion in the budget meeting tonight, because there's no action that we can probably take at this point in time. If the development does go through, it's going to have to go through the planning board. And all the concerns brought up by the neighbors can certainly be aired at the planning board. And I'm sure there are a number. If in the future, for some reason, the property becomes available again, then we could entertain the city purchasing it at that time. But at the moment, I don't believe there's a course of action that we can take to purchase the property. Okay. Are any of the board members have any comments? Okay, with that, I will open the public hearing on R21-202. I'll now entertain testimony in favor. Please come up to the microphone and state your name if you'd like to comment.
For 3 minutes. Make sure.
And you do have a 3-minute time limit. As soon as you start talking, the clock will start.
State the name for the record.
State the name and address for the record.
Paul Metzger, 25 Columbia Ave, Ward 3. Joseph Thornton Greeley gifted 125 acres of land to the city of Nashua in 1896. That land became what we know today as Greeley Park. This year, 2021, marks the 125th anniversary of it. The plot of land in question is parcel 57-3, 15 Bartlett Ave. This 13-acre parcel of old-growth forest is effectively a peninsula that juts into Greeley Park. Surrounded on 2 sides by Greeley and on a 3rd by the city-owned property, parcel 65-216. You, the Aldermen of Nashua, have a unique and singular opportunity. Never before has this plot of land come up for sale, and no matter which way your decision goes, it will never be up for sale again. You will go down in history. The 15 of you, Alderman Karen, Cleaver, Clemens Dowd, Harriet Gaithright, Lou, Jetty, Kelly, Klee, Laws, Lopez, O'Brien, Schmidt, Tenza, and Willwright, you will go down in history as the ones who decided the future of Greeley Park. 125 years from now will be the year 2146. It's unfathomable to think about what life in 2146 will be like, just like the Aldermen in 1896 trying to comprehend life in 2021. But in the year 2146, during the 250th anniversary of Greeley Park, how will the aldermen and citizens of Nashua remember you? Will they look down on you with contempt and disdain for allowing a condo development to be built in the midst of Greeley Park? Or will they look down on you with admiration and pride for having had the forethought and long-term strategic thinking to keep Greeley Park as it is for generations to come, to save this rare urban forest, and for having done your part to help combat climate change? What do you want your legacy to be? There's a petition on change.org to stop the development, have the city purchase the land, and officially add the forest to Greeley Park. As of 5 p.m. yesterday, there were nearly 3,000 signatures on it. Of those, 1,248, or 44%, were Nashua residents, with 70% of those 872 signatures outside of Ward 3. On top of these were 1,138 signatures across the U.S. and 448 across the globe from 42 different countries. Now, you might not care what people from Germany and England think about this, but people from 42 different countries care right about the decision that you're about to make. You know what the right thing to do is. You know what the highest and best use of this land is. I hope that you have the courage to do what is right.
Anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this legislation?
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Penny Ferreira, and I live at 3 Birchwood with my husband, John Ferreira. I've been a resident of Nashville for almost 21 years now. With all due respect, I know it may seem like you can't affect the purchase and sales, but Greeley Park belongs to the citizens, the taxpayers in the city. And through my research of trying to determine what I was gonna say, it came to my attention that the builder has to follow the zoning and the land use, but the people have every right to determine, and also through their voice, how the land will be developed as the people see fit. Also, this has been so quickly done. I only found about it 3 weeks ago. And I wonder, the change.org petition was wonderful, and I thank Paul for doing that. But how many of the other people in your individual wards don't even know that this is happening? And how many of those people actually go to Greeley Park on a regular basis and use it for all different types of programs? I respect, my mother's a realtor, my husband's a builder. I respect the fact that the family has the right to do whatever land that they inherit. But also, as a taxpayer, I have a right to say how any land is developed in this town. And especially where Greeley Park is, where it abuts in 3 places with 43 houses slotted to go in. Any work that is done there, any development, is gonna greatly change the aesthetics and the function of how the citizens can use that park. Also, I wanna refer to the master plan that just got approved 2 months ago. It is loaded with verbiage about that the recommendations and the conservation preservation element is to identify most of the scenic areas in Nashua, determine if the existing land meets the regulatory structure, is sufficient to protect the scenic attributes in the face of development. It's the job of the alderman to protect that. I can't tell you what to do, but I can ask you to listen to the voice of the people that you represent. If you read this in detail, the job is to protect such scenic areas through acquisition and conservation easements. Now, we can ask the builder to put in a bigger easement, but when you walk down behind the swing sets in Greeley Park, you're gonna see the houses. Trees are gonna come down. You're going to have a traffic
30
issue.
seconds.
And I'm just asking you to please consider tabling this and go back to your constituents and ask them, are they willing to have a bill? There is a way that the children, the listing agent, the builder, and the citizens of this town can come up with a better solution, and I know that you can be a part of that. Thank you.
Just before we proceed, I just want to make a point that it's adjacent to Greeley Park. It is not part of Greeley Park. And so if you would state your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Bob Bourne. I live at 28 Farley Street with my wife. The property at 15 Bartlett must be used as the people see fit. Not as the developer sees fit, not as the seller sees fit, as we see fit. I'm asking you to use your good conscience and learn about what we believe is a fit use for the property. There are a number of subjects I could speak on that I think are all relevant to your decision. They include wetlands, agricultural use, traffic, infrastructure, safety, green space. I suspect there's a few more of those. I'll address traffic. Traffic on the northern entrance to Nashua, Concord Street. Imagine that neighborhood around Greeley Park. Imagine a day when Bartlett Street is so congested that it only has room for 1 lane of traffic. That's today. Certain times during the day. Imagine a day when an ambulance driver has to get out of their vehicle and ask people to move their cars so he can leave. That's that neighborhood. That's today. Imagine being able to can't drive to work because the traffic is so thick, so heavy at 7:30 in the morning and 2:30 in the afternoon. That's today. Imagine the nightly school activities when all the students are being asked, the parents are being asked to park along the streets. creating one-lane traffic on multiple streets. That's today. Imagine negatively impacting the activities at Greeley Park. Concerts, school activities, youth beats, Santa in the park, prom pictures, wedding pictures, the kiddie pool, Fright Night, movies in the park, the art show. Because we think that a development is the right thing to do, I beg to differ. Can you use your good conscience and make a good decision
30 seconds.
in favor of what the people see fit for this property? Thank you.
Anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of this legislation?
Thank you. My name's Tim Sennett. I live at 62 Underhill Street in Nashua here in Ward 7. I'm speaking tonight to illustrate a little bit of what Alderman Clee said, that this is not a not in my backyard situation. I live about as far as from Greeley Park as it can get. I had some prepared remarks tonight, but given the information that we learned tonight, I just thought I'd come and address those. You still have an opportunity here tonight. You have an opportunity to take the information that you hear and the testimonies from these residents and be aggressive in your discussions with the developer and the seller. The developer has already articulated that they are not interested in developing property where it is not supported. You're hearing a lot of passionate testimony tonight that this is not supported. I hope that in the opportunities that you have as the leaders of this city to speak with the developers, that this is communicated to them. That many people in this city are not interested in this development occurring abutting Greeley Park. We speak about the difference between property abutting the park and property on the park. A gentleman back here I overheard said is a difference without distinction. Frequent users of Mine Falls Park will tell you that the area over by Whipple Street, where UPS is, was drastically affected by the clear cutting that took place over there. Trails that were very lushly populated by wooded area immediately now abut an industrial area. It does make a difference. Just because it's not in the park doesn't mean it doesn't affect the park. We still have an opportunity. I support this legislation. I support going forward with aggressively trying to purchase this land and preserving Greeley Park. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak in favor of this legislation? And by the way, a lot of these things that you're pointing out, if the purchase does go through, all of these things you're pointing out should be brought up to the planning board because they make all the decisions that you are now talking about. Those decisions are not made by the Board of Aldermen. If the property were available for purchase, then the Board of Aldermen can take actions to try and purchase it. At the moment, it's not available for purchase. But if it does go through with the developer, and he did say today that they are going through with the development, they will still have to go through the planning board, and the planning board can be heard on all the things that you're talking about tonight. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Andrea Rebeck. I live at 111 Atherton Avenue in Nashua, Ward 3. I agree with those who feel the chance to add these 13 forested acres to Greeley Park is a rare opportunity that the city of Nashua should not pass up. But I'm going to address a couple of other points tonight, one financial, one technical. Many opposed to creating this bond. We haven't heard from them yet, but I'm assuming that they are concerned about the debt that the city is incurring with a bond like this, spending more of our tax dollars, and frankly, I'm concerned about that too. But I also know that a city that does not invest in improvements is a city that is dying. Nashua is definitely not dying. The city has invested heavily in creating housing downtown. This benefits the business community, which needs more housing to attract and retain its workers. The city is helping to pay for our new Performing Arts Center, which benefits all of us who enjoy the performing arts. I understand there's another bond being considered tonight for $21 million for Riverwalk improvements. Wow, $21 million. Well, a lot of us enjoy hiking along Riverwalk. So supporting a bond that's about 1/10 the size of this one is actually a small investment in a very important development for Greeley Park. As Alderman Clemmons said last night when I watched him on Zoom, Greeley Park is not a neighborhood park. It belongs to the entire city, as you have heard. I used to live in Ward 8, and believe me, I enjoyed Greeley Park while I lived there, and I enjoy it even more now. And since it does serve the entire city, as the city grows, the park should grow. And about the only place it can grow is the subject of this bond proposal. Now, what to do if the owners don't want to sell to us? Well, there's not much we can do. It's their property. But I'll tell you, as a retired architect who has been involved with several developers and has reviewed many site plans, from just a quick glance at the one presented to us by this developer, this plan has problems. There are numerous technical issues that need to be resolved before it can be approved, and many changes will be required.
30 seconds.
I've seen developers walk away when faced by these requirements. So I would urge the board to keep its options open in terms of a bond to purchase the property. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to be heard in favor of this legislation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Robert Lodi, 12 Bartlett Avenue. Appreciate the opportunity to come and address you tonight. One point I want to make with respect to Mr. Geisinger's comments. I understand he sent a letter to you with respect to this, that he's going to move forward. On November 17th, he stood up in front of 60 residents. I think some of you may have been here. I know it was recorded. And he told us a number of things. One of which is if the city expressed an interest in buying the property or he received opposition, he would step away. We're asking you to pass the bond and confirm to him the city has interest. He's told you already he's going to move forward, so he hasn't kept his word. 2,800 signatures. That's widespread opposition. He hasn't kept his word. So with respect to this measure, this doesn't say the city buys it. This is a measure to pass a bond to give us the opportunity to buy the property. It also gives us time and opportunity to get matching funds. For the Trust for Public Lands, there's a number of resources that are available at the federal, state, and local level to get monies to preserve this land, preserve, protect, and defend this property. We're getting into technicalities when we start to say it's not inside the park. If you spent any time in that park, you know this is essentially surrounded, right? This property is surrounded by the park. So it is part and parcel. It is the essence of the park, and it will be permanently diminished if the city doesn't take action. So a couple facts for you. At least these are some of the studies, I think some of you may have that from 2014 for the Trust for Public Lands. But it showed that 76% of residents in New Hampshire participate in outdoor recreation, and the tax revenue from that outdoor recreation generates $293 million a year. I don't know what the numbers and what the tax revenue generated by Greeley Park, but if you've been there on any summer day, any weekend, even here in the winter, if you were there Sunday for Santa in the Park, how many children came from all across the city, many of them from disadvantaged neighborhoods? So it's not my backyard, it's our backyard, and it's used by residents of every single ward in this city. If you don't take action today, we lose it forever. There's no undo button. There's no second chance. So a couple others. This study also found residential lands consume $1.12 in services for every dollar in tax revenue. So we talk about the cost of the bond. We can't afford this development to go in. It's going to cost us money from here on out. So the benefits of this park, of this development are completely—
30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The benefits go to a developer who's out of state and is developing a development that doesn't fit the city. It's an enclave, and it's not accessible to residents in Nashua. We all know the benefit of being outside, and we all know the 2-year toll that this pandemic has taken, none of which has been felt more greatly than our children. Denying them the access to spend time in a wooded area that's accessible by bus through the entire city is something that cannot be lost. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else in the chamber that wishes to speak in favor of this legislation? If not, I see someone online. Mr. Richardson, you want to speak in favor?
Yes, I do. This is Dan Richardson, 70 Berkeley Street. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to first start off saying that I fully support the logic that Alderman Klee gave in the introduction. I have been a supporter of Greeley Park for as long as I've lived in Nashua, which is 30 years plus. I'm also a member of the Friends of Greeley Park, and which is primarily concerned with protecting the park and having enhancing changes to the park when they make sense. One of the things that I have worried about is placement of private projects into a public park. That's happened over and over again, so there's always an attempt being made to diminish the value of Greeley Park. This is a different case. This is the case where we have land that has been appreciated as part of the park, not knowing all the time that it had actually been private property. And I understand about having the purchase and sale agreement, that we can't interfere with that, but I urge you to pass this resolution to make money available, because in the event that we don't have the opportunity to buy the park outright, it makes a whole lot of sense for the developer to sell us that slice of land, which he will allow to lie fallow, to preserve it as public park. For right now, it would, under his current plan, it would remain private property with private property rights. And I believe that it would be to his benefit, and people would certainly appreciate it if, in the event that he continues on with his development, that he sell that slice of undeveloped property to the city for the enjoyment of the residents and preservation of the park, at least as some of it is, without it being
30 seconds.
just a slice of Greeley Park being hacked away, connected by a narrow strip of park with a road through it. So please do, in fact, pass this resolution. You might not need to use all of the money, but that means you just don't have to borrow that excess amount of money. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of this legislation?
My name is Kathy Lodi, 12 Bartlett Ave. I don't want to repeat what others have said. I support everything that has been said in support of this resolution. It's been really hard for people to put themselves in the position to defend this. I'm not in the position to tell somebody what to do with their property, and nor do I want to. However, as a landowner and a taxpayer, I have the right to speak about what gets developed on that property. At a time when we need more green space, at a time when we need more trees, more connection with the outdoors, we seem to get less and less. This is very important to a lot of people, to thousands of people. Now, the reason we're here is not to interfere with the purchase and sale. It is because Mr. Geisinger said he would back away if the city had interest in purchasing the land. We need your help. We don't want to add more burden to the taxpayers. We have options. We don't want to deprive the sellers or their agents of the proceeds they would make from the sale. We have some options. People can get their money and a town and a city can add to a park that the green space that it desperately needs. This doesn't have to be adversarial or even political. Mr. Geisinger said he would back out if the city had interest. We need you to pass this so he knows the city has interest. And we will work on all of it. We will work on a plan. We will work on the monies. We want to save the land for the park. The people want this land. Please listen to us. Thank you very much.
Yes, Jim Canwheeler?
Yes, Jim Conweiler. I live at 56 Hawthorne Village Road in Ward 9. I'd just like to say I'm really impressed by the support for this legislation, and I strongly urge the city council to go ahead and enact the bond agreement. I've only been a Nashua resident for a little over a year, and I've certainly enjoyed walking in Mine Falls Park. And to know that I haven't been to the section of that's in question, but if it's anything like Mine Falls, the city has a great opportunity to improve the public space we all enjoy. And I just want to thank everyone for their support moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this legislation?
Hello, my name is Denise Musioli. I'm from Ward 8, 6 Midhurst. I don't think I can add anything to what all these people eloquently stated here, the facts and so forth. I'd like to say that my father moved us to Nashua, New Hampshire from Boston, Mass, because of the scenic nature of the city. It would be awful to lose that, especially near Greeley Park. I have enjoyed Greeley Park, and my family has enjoyed Greeley Park for 4 generations. That's quite a bit of fun that we've had at Greeley Park. There's nature up there, there's all kinds of songbirds. There is so much that can be gained. And when you folks said that, you know, pretty much it's done, it's a done deal, I wanted to walk out that door and just say, I tried. But I don't think it's a done deal. We had the same problem with 8 Merritt Parkway that we're going through right now. He wanted to build hundreds and hundreds of apartments there. The developer did listen to us. He's going to be coming up with an alternative that, you know, he's listening to us, he's working with us. It's not a done deal. And I want to praise Patricia Queen, I'm sorry, I don't know everybody's name, for her forward thinking. This land should be conserved for the city of Nashua. There should not be any alternative to that. It should be conserved. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else that wants to speak in favor? Steve Dickinson?
Dixon, thank you. Yeah, and my wife in the back row is shrinking right now as we talk. I'll put the video on. 2 things. Clarkfield, we did this already in North End. The neighborhood bought Clarkfield. But my question is this: how many people live in $600,000 houses? And that's what they're gonna. Each house is gonna be $600,000. How many houses are there? You know, personally, with all due respect, I don't live in a house. Mayor, you live in a $600,000 house? I just don't see that the plan that they put it on there is gonna work. And then the second point I will make, and then I'm done, is the traffic. I go down Columbia Avenue every night, every day, and see the traffic around the school. They have moved, since St. Chris and St. Nashua Catholic have combined, they've put another grade in Nashua Catholic. So now it's, instead of 7 and 8, now it's 6, 7, 8. You really need to take a look at this. You really need to take this. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of this legislation?
Carrie Spear, 9 Columbia Ave, Ward 3. This year and a half, especially with COVID and some injuries that I had to my leg, I ended up walking through Greeley Park every single day with my husband. Every single day, sometimes twice a day. The amount of people that we see in the park every day, and they obviously don't come from our neighborhood all the time, they come from all over the place. We've seen multiple weddings on a single day. The kids are playing. We've seen people hunting for mushrooms, people tracking birds, parents teaching their kids how to ride bikes. It's such a well-used park that it's worth everything to expand it, because we've seen times when there were so many things going on that not enough people had places to set up their areas that they were having celebrations for. That's the main point of this. The second point that I'd like to make is that during a number of meetings, we've heard people say that by putting in these houses, they'll be paying more tax, and therefore everybody else will save a little bit of money on their tax. I think that's a little naive. We all know taxes don't ever go down. 50 years I've owned houses, taxes have never gone down. It's a balance between the assessed valuation and the tax rate, but it never goes down in total. So I think that's a bit of a naive argument. The third thing that we've heard also mentioned is that by having people move into those houses, it'll free up less expensive houses for people that are retiring. My next door neighbor and my behind neighbor both bought those houses within the last year. And they are not from Nashua. They are not from the people that own less expensive houses. They were people from Massachusetts and from out of town. So that argument is also, I don't think it's going to bear any fruition. People who are buying less expensive houses are not going to move into a $600,000 house and take on that kind of debt at retirement age. So I think it just behooves us to save Greeley Park, and not just save it, but to expand it, because it's being overused even now. We've actually seen many Sundays where there's a jousting team in there. Where else can you find jousters? And who even knew they still existed? So I think it's worthwhile saving that park for the creative use that it has. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak in favor of the legislation?
Hello, everyone. I'm Michelle Swallow. I'm from 92 Concord Street. Thank you for having this time for us today. Really, this group has said so much about how valuable the park is, what it means to the city, what could be added by expanding on it. I guess the question I would ask you is, why wouldn't you give us the option to move forward? We're asking for approval of a bond. It doesn't mean we have to spend the money. We've heard from the developer that they want some expression. Well, they don't want it, but they would back away with some expression of interest. Why wouldn't we express the interest? Just why not? We've heard about the potential for all of us to leave a legacy for the generations that follow. Why wouldn't we just do this, even if it seems like it's not going to go anywhere and it's hopeless? It's not. There's action we can take. Please, please pass this resolution.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this legislation?
Thank you for listening to the citizens of the city. My name is Mark Berrigan. I live at 52 Webster Street in Nashua. This urban development, overdevelopment plan is both destructive and dangerous for the quiet, narrow streets of our neighborhood in which we live. It's totally out of character of what the neighborhood is, and as we know it as the North End. You can't blame citizens of Nashua for choosing a nice place to live. The schools are important, good schools, city government, city parks. narrow streets, well-groomed houses, all add up to an experience that generations dream of attaining and work so hard to achieve. Along with its surrounding neighborhoods, Greeley Park is one such place. I can remember exactly the moment I fell in love with Greeley Park. I fell in love with the indestructible metal slide that no one in their right mind would ever make today. It seemed 100 feet tall when I was younger, and the swings, so long are the chains, one can kick tree branches 20 feet in the air. That indestructible slide, those monkey bars and swings are still here today for children to enjoy at Greeley Park. Over 50 years that I've known it, maybe more, I'm sure. The paved path that connects Concord to Manchester streets is the absolute best place to walk, jog, bike uphill both ways. It's out of sight of any traffic noise or urban overdevelopment pollution. I ran along that path every day when the city had exercise stations along throughout the woods. And that would be the beginning of my training as a United States Marine Corps captain and war veteran. I made it through OCS because of that park running along the Barker property, hidden just out of sight. Some of those workout stations are still there too. Along that road is surrounded by sweet-smelling forestry. A little getaway right in our park, right in our very own town. For a few years, I lived in a city that had so much urban sprawl it would make your head spin. Los Angeles, California. When my two daughters were born, I decided right then and there I wanted a better place for them to grow up. A place where they could run and play,
30 seconds.
Ride their bikes without fear of city traffic. This is why I came back from Los Angeles to live in the very neighborhood I grew up in, Nashua, New Hampshire, to raise my two daughters in the same park that I had the privilege of growing up in, and pushing them on the very same swings and slides. Let's keep the best of Nashua intact. The best place to live in the country, quite frankly, one hell of a park. It would be a terrible waste of public, thank you.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak in favor of this legislation?
My name is Fred Shirley. I live at 111 Atherton Avenue. I've lived in Nashua for over 50 years, and during that time, I've come to realize what an extraordinary place Greeley Park is. People have already said just about everything I was hoping to say, but I just add two comments about the uniqueness of Greeley Park. Down where it meets the Manchester River, the city recently put in that beautiful boat ramp so people can access the water. No place else in the city has that. And the other one is that there's a garden there where people can grow plants. Other parks don't have that kind of thing. I think Greeley Park is something really special.
Anyone else like to speak in favor of this legislation? Seeing no one, I'm going to move on to test.
Good evening. My name is Mike Vigiano. I live at 35 Columbia Avenue. First, I want to apologize because I had written up a very nice dissertation for tonight. My wife said it read like War and Peace, and I couldn't get it down to 3 minutes. So I sent you all an email. I hope you read all of it. I think it's very thoughtful. I think it's meaningful. It's not a rant by any means. But it says how I feel about how things over the years and over the past centuries have come about with national parks and people who have saved land, including here in Nashua in the state. You know, earlier I heard one of you say, and I couldn't tell which one because of all the mass, that there really is nothing that can be done. Well, I'm looking at a group of people here, my neighbors, who have a can-do attitude about everything, right? You can't tell a group of people in this room that nothing can be done. If there's a will on your part, there's a way to get it done. And I'm sure there is with the help of all these folks, okay? You You know, we have been doing this for how many weeks now? I look at Gary and Laurie and Barbara and Jean. I hope we're all listening to what's going on here, because a lot is at stake, as everybody's already said. And you know, I'm gonna run a little cliche by you, you know? We're Americans, not Americans. So let's get this done. Thank you.
I just want to be clear, it may have been misunderstood. We're not saying there's nothing that can't be done. If the purchase and sale does go through, it has to go, any project has to go through the planning board. And the planning board will take into account all the things that you're mentioning tonight, and they can stop or change the project. We, as aldermen, can't do that. All we can do is have the money available if there's an opportunity to buy the property, which is what the legislation is addressing. Okay, if there's no one else.
Well, he already spoke. She has not.
Yes, Susan Vale?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know what mode I'm in here. I just want to quickly say that I would like the Board of Aldermen to approve the bond, and
We need
by
your
reason
address.
for that, oh, I'm sorry, Suzanne Vale, also a New Hampshire State Representative, and I'm at 28 Norton Street, Nashua. And I am speaking in favor of the legislation because I think that we need time to look at the impact that this kind of a change would have on this park. This is a budding historical property, and it is, it's hard for me to imagine, having walked the park, what the park will look like. And I think there will be significant changes. I also don't think the rest of the community, the city at large, as one of the earlier speakers said, I just don't think that they really know what's going on. So I hope that we can approve this legislation and get some time to look at the situation. I don't think it's just a simple sale from one family to another developer when there's this many people. It's a big city that's going to be impacted by the loss of this land. And as Alderman Klee had said, once it's gone, there's no getting it back. So let's not mess this up. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, no one else wants to speak in favor?
I would just like to say, I want to thank my neighbors for coming out. Thank you. Thank you to trying to save our neighborhood. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you very much.
All right, if there's no other further testimony in favor, I will now ask for testimony in opposition to this legislation. Come up to the microphone. Name and address.
John Sullivan, 30 Holbrook Drive, Nashua, New Hampshire, in Ward 9. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I come before the board to share my thoughts on why I think the city shouldn't interfere with private land development and turn this piece of private land into government-owned property. According to the housing study that just got completed a year ago, Nashua has a housing shortage problem. Our low inventory of housing is driving up prices. It's economics 101. We lack housing in all price ranges. The planning department set a goal of 5,000 units of housing. 5,000, that's a lot. If this development on private land doesn't happen, there's 44 units towards the 5,000 that won't happen. We're no closer to our goal. I guess we'll just have to develop somewhere else. Where? If we keep making exceptions for one reason or another, we don't hit our goal. We won't get affordable housing, and we'll make no progress. If the city buys this land, what does the city do with it? Sell it? To whom? And now we're in the real estate business? I like my city to focus on infrastructure, public safety, and education, not private land development. If the city buys this land, that's an estimated $600,000 in taxes that we can get in revenue to pay the police, the fire department, and our teachers. That revenue needs to come from somewhere. Either it comes from current property owners through higher taxes, or we can expand the base. If the city buys this land, our taxes will go up even more. I've looked at the plans. I've walked the space. I have enjoyed Greeley Park with my family for many, many years. If you stand on Concord Street and look towards the stone house, you simply cannot see it. If you're enjoying a show on the stage or playing softball on the fields, it doesn't impact your experience. This doesn't encroach 1 inch onto Greeley Park. There are setbacks in place. The city can work with the developer to make them fit the character of the neighborhood. This development is
30
also
seconds.
forward-thinking. The homes don't use a lot of land. That's more homes on less land. It stops sprawl. If you travel this country and the world, homes are closer together. It increases density. This is the way we should be developing, smarter, more efficient. If the city buys this land, it sets a bad precedent. There was no documented uproar when developers bought the land off of Ridge Road in my ward that was a Boy Scout
Time.
camp. It's private land. Let the market take care of itself and have the city provide the guardrails. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak in opposition to this legislation? Anybody online? That's it.
No?
Again, anybody in,
Oh, wait, oh, here, Laurie Ottolano, okay.
yes, Mr. Orlando?
No, Laura Cahoon.
I called on Laura Ortolano.
Hi, yes, good evening, Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I do not think we should act on this bond. This is a private piece of property that a private owner is acting upon. And people who believe that we are taking something away from Greeley Park, I think are misguided. Nothing in Greeley Park is changing with respect to the approximately 100 acres that exist there now. We had a recent master plan completed, and that master plan did not identify expanding Greeley Park at all. In fact, it identified setting up other parks in other parts of Nashua that don't have parks available. I walk Greeley Park a good bit, and I'm very familiar with the fence area that is the Barker's property. And I do not believe that a development in that area is going to diminish the park, or that somehow we have an obligation to scoop up those 13 acres to make the park more complete. It's almost 100-acre park right now, and we have other parts of the city that don't have them. The housing study, which I read completely, did show approximately 5,000 houses that we are short. And we continue to spend money. And I don't know how many people are going to speak up against spending $21 million tonight, but we are a spending city, and we're doing a lot of spending. And somebody's got to pay the bills and keep the lights on. And when you think that the tax revenue raised by that property is insignificant, I think you're wrong. I also think there's an absolute market for those houses to sell at $700,000. And I'm pretty certain a developer would not propose something that realistically would not sell. I think we have an obligation to let the process work the way the process should work. And everyone's opinions about what is right and wrong should be vetted through the planning board and the zoning board if necessary. They're the entities that will be certain that the codes and the ordinances are followed and that the property is within the right to develop itself the way it can be developed. I think it's really important that we let that process go. So I am not in favor of bonding this money up. We have a lot of other needs. And that is important housing. The unit down
30
by,
seconds.
the development down by Cherrywood was opposed by people. And you're correct, the developer changed from 160 luxury units to 44 townhomes down there with a lot of asphalt space. I'm not certain the residents are gonna be that happy with that either. But this development needs to happen because we continue to spend and we have a need for the housing. And the housing report and the master plan both support development. Thank you.
Time.
Yes, John, Kathy, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
John Cathy, 32 Hartwell Brook Drive. I am not in favor of Resolution 21202 for several reasons. The biggest reason I feel passage of this resolution is a bad idea is the overall cost of the project. When we consider interest on the debt and the lost tax revenue over the life of the bond, this project doesn't cost $2.5 million. It costs $15 million or more over 20 years. Even if we remove the future projected revenue, it's still $3.1 million with interest. How can we, the citizens, be asked to support this resolution when our aldermen and our mayor have not expressed to us how this will be paid for? Currently, the resolution calls for more debt, on top of the $21 million debt, which will probably be approved for the Riverwalk, on top of $20 million debt for the PAC, which now puts us over $100 million of debt. Secondly, it strikes me as interesting that we have another issue or resolution being brought to the public, and we, the citizens, are being asked to approve or disapprove a resolution when we don't have enough information yet. It has not gone through the proper planning boards and other committees for recommendations and any other issues that may arise. Thirdly, although it was stated by one of the aldermen that they cannot interfere with the process, some have alluded to figuring out a way to interfere and or stop this. I would strongly object to any attempt to interfere or to discuss interfering with the purchase and sale of this land, as it creates a poor legal precedent for how Nashua does things with businesses and residents' private property. In closing, passing this resolution is extremely unprudent. Currently, without proof of a plan to show us the money used will not affect the taxpayers, it's an added expenditure we cannot afford. We need more information about the source of money being used to purchase this land. Hopefully that doesn't affect taxes, and we have to wait for this resolution to go through the appropriate committees, which it has yet to do. The master plan calls for plenty of green space. This is not the only green space available. Emotional appeals are understandable, but making decisions based on emotion are ill-advised. This is not to say that having more green space or this green space is bad. However, the expense incurred and the speedy process on this issue and the lack of a clear plan that definitely show our taxes will not be affected means this resolution must be rejected until these issues are solved. Thank you.
Next, Alex Como.
Yes, thank you. My name's Alex Como. I live at 4 Lewis Street. A lot has been said tonight about saving our park and protecting our park. To be very clear, I love Greeley Park. But there's an important distinction to make here. However, this parcel of land is currently undeveloped as parkland. It's not an active part of Greeley Park. Reading testimony on social media as well as the language in the online petition that's been circulated would lead one to believe that an evil corporation from south of the border of Massachusetts wants to invade Nashua and build a skyscraper on top of one of our softball fields. This is simply not the case. A developer wants to make good use of a piece of property that is not currently being used, not to build another gas station, Dunkin' Donuts, or credit union, but to build housing, something Nashua desperately needs more of. Concern has been raised that adding these additional houses would congest traffic in this quiet neighborhood. At the same time, we were simultaneously debating congesting the traffic on Main Street for another 3 years. Development of this property would not have a negative impact on the existing services and amenities provided by Greeley Park. New housing on Bartlett Ave would not result in the loss of Greeley Park's horseshoe pits or softball fields. New housing will not result in the reduction of picnic areas or the demolition of the sensory garden. New housing will not result in the removal of the trails between Manchester Street and Concord Street. All of these wonderful parts of Greeley Park will still remain. I myself spend a lot of time in Mine Falls, using the trails for walking and biking. I've hosted many of my children's birthday parties in Greeley's picnic areas, and I'm an avid softball player that is frequent use of the fields. If there was any chance that this development would negatively impact the use of the park, I would be the first to stand against it, but the fact is that is not the case. If the city proceeds in purchasing this property, we would then have to account for the costs associated with its development and maintenance as part of a city park. The city would additionally lose the potential tax revenue associated with the housing proposed for this area. The citizens of Nashua are already stretched too thin. We can't expect the city to step in and buy every piece of property that a developer wants to build on just because somebody doesn't want condos built to the end of their street. I understand the chairman's information that it would not be up to this board to approve this development, that this is a role delegated to the planning board, but that some petitioners want this bond approved just to prove to the developer that we are interested. Those two things are tightly woven together. It would be disingenuous of us to approve this bond to show the seller that we're serious about buying the property without having that serious discussion and approval to do so. To approve this bond just to hold up this private sale of private property would be wrong. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wants to give testimony in opposition?
Laura Cahoon?
Yes.
Laura Cahoon?
Yes, Laura Cahoon, go ahead.
30 Greenwood Drive. I just find it very funny that the city all of a sudden buy these 13 acres when they're put up for sale, when in fact they knew that the owner of this property was paying full property taxes and never once went to them and said, maybe you want to do current use, which is like forest or something else. This 13 acres is not going to affect Greeley at all. And as everybody has said before, Nashua needs affordable housing, and this, what the developer has done is a very nice plan, and I think it should go through. And I give credit to the family, the property owner, because they've been very upfront and have paid their taxes for many, many years. And if they want to sell their land to a developer, I say go for it. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak in opposition to this legislation? Seeing none, I'll now take testimony in favor of this. If anybody wants to rebut something that was said in opposition, please don't repeat anything that was said before. But if you want to say something to counter what was just said in opposition, you may come up. One at a time.
Denise Musioli, Ward 8, 6 Midhurst. I would like to rebut, I think Ms. Como and somebody else said that it's not going to affect the park. Do you know when the condominiums are going to be built, the townhomes are going to be built, they're going to be using pesticides because they don't want mice there, they don't want rodents and so forth. They're going to be using all kinds of landscaping chemicals that are going to run off into the park. That is going to affect Greeley Park. And if you think $600,000 housing is affordable, you need to talk to 90% of the middle-class working people of this city, because I assure you, $600,000 housing is not affordable.
Anyone else that wants to speak in favor?
Yeah, I'm back. You know, it is what it is. But yeah, I agree with that, $600,000. But it's so much.
Did you state your name and address for the record again?
My all means Steve D, 31 Columbia Avenue, and I'm not the wife of Gene Dixon. She's already looking down. I know. No, what they said was good, but they don't live here. They don't live on the traffic that comes by the school. They don't see that. And now we're going to put 800. So 43 houses with 2 cars each. Do the math. More cars coming down there. I understand what they're saying. Their wards don't want to pay for this. It's not the case. It's the footprint. 13 acres, 13 houses. That would be the rent. That would make that house. And seriously, I'll go back to and I'll stop. I got 30 seconds. We have footprint in the North End. We have that football game that we play. every year, or when, the last couple of years. We have the footprint. Let's just keep it. And I'm not against, I mean, I guess, you know, selling, buying, but let's just keep the footprint of the North Bank. With all due, I'm done.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to speak in favor? Rebut anything that was?
Thank you, Robert Lodi, 12 Bartlett Avenue. I want to congratulate future Alderman Cathy, but I think I need to address some of the mistakes he made. He spoke with emotion, and he liked to have facts. He said $21 million is the repayment on $2.5 million. The assessment is, it's $2.5 million with interest, it's $3.1 million. The debt payment is $157,812 a year. The city budget for the fiscal year was $425 million. This is 0.0036% of the budget. The average median income in the city of Nashua is $37,000. 0.0037% of that is $13.30. I'll say someone who's making $37,000 a year might be willing to spend $1 a month to keep this park.
Anyone else that wants to speak in favor?
I'm wrestling with my mask. Hi, thank you for letting me speak again. Penny Ferreira, 3 Birchwood. Again, I keep referring to the master plan that is basically what my understanding is a recommendation and a guideline for what should happen. I'm going to read you this. A key assumption of built-out scenarios is that all developable land will be developed to its maximum potential. The builder has shown just in his preliminary sketch that he plans to build out to the max. Build-out studies thus present the worst-case scenario for the municipality point of view. And since most of the housing development results in a negative cash flow for the municipality, and the reason is that no matter what the tax base is, you're going to incur more costs for schools, fire, police, and waste disposal generated from a development. So you have to make wise choices. Is it really worth 43 houses to get the tax income when it's really going to cost the city more? When you can provide, again, going back to your constituents and asking them, are they willing to pay for this bond? You have a drop in a bucket here of the people that wanted to come tonight or could come tonight. And I am going to be at every planning board. I'm going to educate. I've already told Matt Sullivan I'm going to be his best friend. I'm going to call him every week and get educated on what the planning board regs are. I'm going to use every tool in my wheelhouse to fight this. The family has every right to sell the land, but it abuts a community, a huge community property. I am asking, and I don't even know if we can get a valid vote tonight. Are there 10 people? Do we have to have 10 or just a majority for the bond?
Just, I'll answer that question. We're having a
Okay.
public hearing.
Okay.
After the public hearing, we're going to adjourn for a few minutes in the budget committee.
Okay.
We'll then address each one of these
Gotcha.
bonds
Okay.
and take action.
Okay.
And whatever action is taken by the budget committee goes to the full board of aldermen.
Okay.
And then the full board of aldermen will have to take any final action.
Okay.
And
So let me say this, with my mother being a realtor, I learned a lot riding around in cars on weekends with her and watching her do deals. Yes, the purchase and sales has been signed, but this builder is going to have to build in stages. And he's not going to go to closing until a certain point. Anything can happen between the purchase and sales and closing. And there are alternatives. The kids can
30
get what they
seconds.
want and not sell to the city because there are other options. The city can be the hero and help negotiate so the people that want to keep this park intact and add to it. Also in here, you're supposed to add more trails, by the way. I encourage you to read this. And then the builder and the listing agent can get what they want without any money having to be wasted on putting this property in, this development in. Thank you.
anyone else who wants to speak in favor? Oh, Dan Richardson?
Yes, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So the Board of Aldermen have a responsibility for spending money in the public interest for the greater good of the city, for the enjoyment of the citizens. And there's been a lot of wasteful spending that this Board of Aldermen has done. This expenditure is a community good. This is money that it would be well spent. It's necessary to provision legally that you will have the authority to bond this money. It does not say that you will spend all of the money. It just says that you're provisioning enough in the event that you have to cover expenses of acquisition, paying for land, paying for perhaps even the fees of a realtor, and any other expenses, perhaps some planning expenses of the developer in the event of an acquisition or change of plan. So please do pass this resolution and give the authorization to borrow the money for the acquisition. The other thing I'd like to say is I'd like to reinforce what Mr. Jacobson said about traffic in that area. We have a very good school, Nashua Catholic Junior High School there, and there is a tremendous amount of traffic. My children went there. It is a great school. People know it's a great school, and they send their children there, and it's doing very well. There's a lot of traffic. Parents come, they drop their children off, they pick their children up, and you've got to consider that in that area also. So I know that you can't do anything about these planning board issues, but please provision the authority to borrow the money. Thank you very much.
Anyone else in favor?
Thank you very much. My name is Tracy Hollis. I live at 11 Bartlett. 15 Bartlett is the Barker property. We are a direct abutter to the Barker property. We've known the Barkers for many, many years. My husband and Alan Barker and Doug Barker have served on the Edgewood Cemetery Board for upwards of 30 years. When this all came to fruition, we were actually kind of surprised because there have been people who have been speaking about it was public knowledge that the property was for sale. Not so much. It kind of happened in the quiet of night. I am concerned for the park. I'm concerned for the wildlife of the park. This year, the corner of our property, we had a bobcat in our backyard that our dog flushed out of the woods. Not suggesting that I want bobcats in my yard, but that is the kind of wildlife that we have. We also have Nashua Catholic, which is at 6 Bartlett. They have 209 students in their school right now. What did I say? 128 kids are drivers. Well, they're not drivers, their parents drive them. 102 of those children do not live in Nashua. So they have to be driven to school. I took a video last Thursday of the parents picking their children up from school. It went up our street, Bartlett, down Wellington, down Columbia. They have walkers that go out the back side of the school. The impact of the 44, 42 plus homes, my husband, who you probably all know is Morgan Hollis, has estimated by studies that it could be upwards of 480 cars a day that are impacted in our general neighborhood. We have no lights. The street condition is horrible. We have no sidewalks. And now they want to introduce 44 homes. I have a
30
bit
seconds.
of concern. I've not met Lloyd. My husband has. Very nice property. The homes are beautiful. They are not price worthy for the lower income housing issues that we have in the city of Nashua. We're talking $700,000 to $900,000 homes. That's not what people can afford, the general population. But the traffic for us is a real concern. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
I assume that was in opposition, not in favor?
In favor.
In favor? All right, all right.
Favor of the resolution.
In favor of the resolution. Okay, again, favor of the resolution. Go ahead.
Again, Paul Metzger, 25 Columbia Ave, Ward 3. We've heard about 20 people or so talk in favor of this tonight, more in the galley here in favor that have not spoken. We heard 5 people in opposition to it. I'll point out some of the numbers from the online petition, since it was kind of quick going through it last time. We have 1,248 Nashua residents in favor of this. Of that, 872 of those are outside of Ward 3. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else in favor?
Carrie Spear, 9 Columbia.
Carrie, you want to take the mic down a little so we can hear you? Bend the mic down.
I'm sorry, take the mask down.
Or your mask, either one.
The microphone.
Sorry. They don't make them small enough for me. All right, I think I'm good. We talked about traffic. I don't know, nobody's mentioned the fact that the Nashua Catholic School that's on Columbia, the girls' track team practices on Columbia Ave. The boys, there's a boys' team that practices on Bartlett, right on the street, because they don't have any other place to play or do their sports and various other relay races and things that I see them doing every single day in the spring and in the fall. With another 80 some odd cars coming through there. I know Nashua, the Catholic school has said they don't want to be involved, but I think maybe they have to start thinking about what it's going to do to their various track teams and all the rest of the stuff that those kids are used to playing on. Maybe the idea of expanding Greeley Park so that they can play over there might be something useful to them, and that they shouldn't stay out of this discussion, that maybe they need to be part of it. Thank you, that's all I wanted.
Anyone else in favor that has something to rebut that was brought out?
Hello again. Tim Sennett, 62 Underhill Street, Ward 7. It feels like a distraction to me to hear speakers in opposition speak down against this because the city is in desperate need of affordable housing. That's factual. The city does require more affordable housing. This isn't it. Affordable housing is the type of housing they build in my neighborhood. We recently built the Marshall Street Apartments over on the old BD Rubber plot. We're currently working on the Henry Hanger site to build more housing over there. You'll never hear me up here opposing it. I don't think that if affordable housing were on the ledger here, that you'd hear the people behind me speaking against it. I don't think anybody here is opposed to new neighbors. They're opposed to the impact on their neighborhood. They're opposed to the impact on the park. To sit here and say that this would not have an effect on the park is also factually untrue. You could probably guess just by listening to me that I don't need this microphone in front of me. My son is 6 years old, and I regret to say that he got his voice from me. At the risk of perhaps alienating myself from some of the folks behind me, I'll draw your attention back to when the proposed legacy playground was proposed for Greeley Park. It was met with vast opposition because of the impact it would have on the neighborhood due to noise and use. You're going to reduce the buffer between the neighborhood and the park even greater on the eastern side of the park. And you're going to have children like my son going down the slide screaming at my decibel level. Now you're going to have a new impact on the park because you're going to have neighbors opposed to the park's eminent use. This is going to drastically affect Greeley Park if this plot is developed. Like an earlier speaker said, there may not be much we can affect here tonight. I would still implore this board to approve the bond, to have the money ready and prepared should the opportunity come to purchase this tract of land. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing as many of you at the planning board meetings. Thank you.
Anyone else in favor? Seeing, you've already spoken, I'm sorry, you can't speak again. Anyone in opposition? Lori Ortolano?
Hi, good evening. Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. Just to clarify a few things, I think the concerns that the neighbors have with traffic are very valid, but they're misplaced being addressed here with the Board of Aldermen or at a hearing. Those concerns have to be addressed with the planning board using the process that's available for a existing developer to bring their plans and have them vetted. And I think everyone does need to go forward to the planning board and participate in those meetings and express their concerns. I'm very concerned when I hear people talk about affordable housing because I attended the meeting at the church on a Sunday evening and it was pushed very heavily by Alderwoman Clee that we make this an affordable housing issue. And I was very opposed to that because the developer never pitched this as an affordable housing development. It was very clear when he said these properties would sell between $650,000 and $750,000 that it was not affordable housing. And the housing study does not talk about putting only affordable housing in. It talks about putting in housing across all sectors. So this is definitely high-end housing, more exclusive. Now, if the gentleman who just spoke really believes that if we went to affordable housing in your neighborhood and reduced it to 23 units of affordable housing, you'd accept that, well, then maybe that's what you can get. But I think it's unrealistic to pitch that it should be divided up into 13 lots of 13 acres. That's not our call. And the concept of 1 acre lots for homes in Nashua is really over based on the housing density we need to accommodate the growth of the city. I love my neighbor, Dan, and I think he's a terrific neighbor and he's on the other side of this issue from me. And the one thing I agree wholeheartedly with Dan is that I think this Board of Aldermen has been very irresponsible with spending. I agree with him, a lot of bad spending decisions have been made. However, he sees, this issue of preserving the space as the right thing to do. I don't think the spending decisions made by this city are gonna change, and there's a hearing right after this for $21 million to be spent that actually hasn't even been discussed by the board in 2 years. And I don't think we're gonna stop spending. So we need to look at ways to have people who pay the bills and keep the lights on. That's the way it has to be. And we need this housing according to the study. So it's not just affordable housing. It should have never
30
been pitched
seconds.
that way. So let's take this where it belongs and bring it to the planning board and not approve this bond tonight and let the planning board do its job and have faith that they're gonna do their job and everyone get out there and watch and participate. That's a fair process.
Okay, Mr. Kathy?
Thank you. I would just like to clarify, I believe there was a miscommunication. I never stated that this particular project would be 21 million. I was referring to the debt that would be incurred by the bonds for the Riverwalk, which will be discussed later on this evening. Just to point out the amount of debt the city keeps spending. The number that I quoted for this particular project was $15 million, and that's over 20 years because that's how long the bond lasts. So if we lose $600,000 in tax revenue every year for 20 years on top of the initial cost, which would be 3.1 million with interest, we're now looking at $15 million that we don't really have to spend. Secondly, I would like to echo what Lori was saying about the affordable housing. everyone needs to go read the Imagine Nashville plan and the housing studies that they have not. We need housing for every market number, every level of housing that you can get, we need. So this is not about affordable housing, because we need condos at this price range as well. This is more about the city spending money it doesn't have and going into more debt. That's the only thing that this really hinges on, and it's just not wise because it hasn't gone through the proper channels and the proper committees yet. And we need to see from the alderman and the mayor a very transparent plan about how this money is not going to incur more debt or cost taxpayers a rise in taxes, which we've been continuing to see year over year. Thank you.
Alex Como?
Yeah, thanks, Alex from 4 Lewis Street. I'll be brief. Just to touch on a couple of things, I agree with several of the points that Lori just made, as well as the points that John made. You know, Nashua does need affordable housing, but that's not all that we need. We need housing in many different levels. And the fact is that there are affordable housing projects ongoing. The Myrtle Street apartment project, I believe there's renovations going on Burke Street. So there is affordable housing coming down the pipeline for lower income families, but they're not the only people looking for housing. We talk all the time about attracting people to Nashua and having the types of amenities and services that people want, that they want to come live here and contribute to Nashua, which they can't do if there's nowhere to live. And, you know, the disruptions that people talked about possibly seeing in these neighborhoods, unless I'm mistaken, this was supposed to be an age-qualified development. I don't hardly think that retired people at the end of the day in the street are going to be disrupting the tranquility of the park. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, anyone else in opposition? Have you spoken before in opposition?
I might have, so am I allowed to?
He hasn't spoken in opposition, but he's spoken twice in favor.
But I was, in affordable housing, yeah, is there a percentage of with this new development we have to have in there? Affordable housing? And Lori made a good point. She made an excellent point. Is there a percentage of this housing that has to be affordable housing? Just curious. I'm done.
All right.
Is there?
That's it. All right. With that, I will close the public hearing on R21-202.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
With that closed, Mr. Chairman, before us this evening is R-21-187, changing the purpose of up to $440,225 of unexpected bond proceeds from the LED streetlight project to infrastructure improvements, sidewalk construction for the design, repair, and construction of sidewalks.
Okay, just so everyone knows, we have to go through these other 3 public hearings before the budget committee will meet and take action on all 4 of these actions, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Alderman Clements?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to let everyone know that I am here participating via Zoom, and I joined the meeting at 7:05. There's no one in the room with me. Thank you.
All right. So, on this particular bond resolution, and I believe we have the city engineer here to talk to it, this is money that was allocated for one purpose, and we're now reallocating it for another, and it's not new bonding. Mr. Hudson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is correct. Dan Hudson, city engineer. This is bond money that was secured for an LED streetlight conversion project, which has been completed. So this is remaining money from that project that was unused. And the request is to to reassign that to sidewalk work. As you know, the city has many sidewalks and many in need of repairs. And so this would help us towards those efforts.
Okay. Are there any questions for any of the aldermen on this particular bond? Alderman Wiltshire?
Yeah, I just had a question of Mr. Hudson. Have you already identified where the sidewalks are gonna be repaired with this money?
Thank you. No, we haven't identified specific locations. One of the first things we're gonna do, and actually we're scoping it right now, is do a complete inventory of all the sidewalk in the city. I mean, we have some mapping, but this effort will be a detailed review, identifying where all our deficiencies are and confirming where all of our sidewalk segments are. So that'll be the first effort, and then we'll prioritize based upon condition and based upon proximity to schools, public facilities, bus stops, and that sort of thing, to come up with a plan of attack, so to speak, for the repairs that are needed.
Thank you.
All set? Yes, Alderman Lopez.
I'm just curious about the time frame. If the first step, if this passes, and if we do begin the evaluation of the study, is the weather gonna get in the way? And if that is a concern, would you like me to photograph all of Ward 4 for you?
Sure, that'd be great. That effort probably will go forward, maybe regardless. That we're working on a scope with National Regional Planning Commission. That work will be done next summer. You know, this funding, that will only use a portion of this funding, so there could be other fixes done elsewhere with this money. I mean, this $400,000 is quite a bit of money, but sidewalks are also very expensive. So, but every bit helps, and this will certainly help us work towards improving our sidewalks.
Just one follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Follow-up, Alderman Lopez?
Are the sidewalks also subject to the moratorium when utility work is done?
That's a good question. I don't believe they are, no. That issue has come up. You know, we had to do some work on Main Street, and of course those sidewalks were, you know, fairly recently done. But we did proceed with that work and just tried to match the repair of the sidewalk as best we could to the existing condition. You know, it's inevitable that things come up, and we do have to cut these newer infrastructure features, and it's unfortunate, but it is something that happens.
Alderman Tenzo.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hudson, when people come before the planning board, many times the city collects a fee for payments in lieu of having to place sidewalks in certain areas that they're not already there. Why aren't we using that money to help kind of ongoing to pay for sidewalk upkeep and repair?
Yeah, we thanks for that question. We do use that money. We have been using that money. Last year, we did quite an extensive project along East Hollis Street, replacing over 1,000 feet of sidewalk there, and we used money from a number of sources, one of which was those sidewalk funds. Those sidewalk funds are by zone, so there's 4 different zones, and they need to be used in those zones. But that is one of the funding sources we draw from. Those contributions are helpful, but unfortunately, they don't total up to enough to make a significant impact usually. So we really need more significant dedicated funding such as this in order to do more extensive projects.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No one? All right. I will open the public hearing on R21-187. Testimony in favor.
Lori Ortolano?
Ms. Orlando?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. If the money from the excess money from the LED project that is bonded money is not spent on this, where does it go, or what happens to that money? Hello?
Treasurer Fedett, do you want to answer that? If we don't spend the money, I think I know, but I think I'd rather have the answer come from the treasurer.
Thank you.
We don't have this problem very often. So, I haven't seen it for quite a while, but you may be able to use it to help make payments on bonds, but, or pay the principal on bonds, but there's a lot of IRS rules on that because these are non-taxable bonds that we sell. So there's rules on that. So but that's possibly one area that could be used for.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we have to either use it to repay the principal on the bond or transfer it to another bondable expenditure.
Okay, so I'm assuming
So-
from testimony from Mr. Hudson that we have sidewalks in desperate need of repair, and that's sort of a safety issue, so,
So just a point of clarification, if
excuse me, who's speaking?
it's Lori Ortolano,
Are you still, okay, go ahead.
I would like you to consider changing the rules when you have a hearing so that we can ask more than one question. Because clarification is important, and if I want to back something, I want to understand it. I'm just trying to understand what Attorney Bolton said. So if the money has to be used toward the principal or on the bond, you have this extra money from the LED project, we are allowed to transfer it over to do sidewalks. Do we have any money currently earmarked to address sidewalk issues?
I think it was just pointed out that monies are collected when people do developments towards sidewalks, and that money is already being used to repair some sidewalks. This would be the additional funds so we can fix more of the sidewalks that are in total disrepair.
30 seconds.
Okay, well, we just finished redoing all the handicap ramps on sidewalks, or have been working a big project on that now. Was that done by impact fees, or was that a separately funded project?
Director Hudson?
Sure, so the work we've been doing on the ramps is related to the paving program. Per federal regulations, we're required to replace the ramp access, or actually to make it ADA compliant, I should be clear. The ADA access to the sidewalk system. So that work has been done and paid for as part of the paving program, although that is work that those funds could be used for. As I said, I don't have the balances of those zone accounts with me tonight, but it's not a significant amount of money. I mean, and it is something that we will continue to use and could be used towards that type of work.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else testimony in favor? Seeing none, testimony in opposition? Seeing no one, other testimony in favor?
Yes, Lori Ortolano?
Yes?
How will it be determined what sidewalks are going to be addressed? Is there an existing sidewalk plan in place that you are working off of to do improvements throughout the city?
And?
So, no, to my knowledge, no. I mean, there are specific issues that the Attorney General's office is asking us to address that have come to light relative to complaints we received. So, Mr. Cummings will be up to speak about Riverwalk later, and that will address some of those issues. But no, this is something that we need to do. The city needs to develop a comprehensive plan, and that's what part of this money will be used for. But there are no shortage of areas needing repair. I mean, I can go out and find you a dozen in a few minutes. So this funding would be helpful. It's something that we certainly want and need to focus more on as going forward.
Okay, all set?
Yes.
All right, Alex Como, this is testimony in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Alex Como, 4 Lewis Street. I guess I'm undecided at the moment. I have a couple of questions for Mr. Hudson, if that's all right. And forgive my ignorance, but is there currently an amount already budgeted for improvements, design, repair, and construction for sidewalks? And if there is, are you projecting a shortfall to that amount that would make this expenditure from the bond proceeds necessary? And lastly, are you, or is your department going to be taking suggestions from neighborhoods for sidewalk projects that are necessary in each ward?
Mr. Hudson?
Sure, so there's a lot there. We're happy to take suggestions if people have issues with mobility and accessing sidewalks. We're happy to take those complaints. The city also has an ADA coordinator who can be a point person for those complaints as well. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and sidewalks is one area that we really don't have a dedicated funding source for, so to speak, other than those contributions. We do make some repairs each year through our street department, and that's through some of the infrastructure funding that's provided in the budget for the street department, but no comprehensive regular plan is in place, and that's something that I think the city eventually, we need to get to there, but we need to do some work ahead of that. We need to do, like I said, an extensive inventory, identify what we have for issues, prioritize where money is best directed to have the maximum benefit, and then we would develop such a plan and hopefully at some point have a continuing funding source that we could rely on to make those repairs.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other testimony in favor?
Derek Tebow, 9 Emerson Road. Since we're asking questions, my curiosity is, during a public hearing, are we supposed to just talk about what we want to talk about, or do we ask questions? Because I thought we don't ask questions, right?
In a public hearing, you can ask questions. If there's somebody here that can answer, they will. If we can't, they defer it.
Okay. So I'll get on to my point about roads. Roads, sidewalks. Sidewalks need fixing. I talked to Lauren today at the DPW, and she said there is no sidewalk program like the paving program. So I think we do need to take that money and fund the sidewalk program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else testimony in favor? Seeing no one, testimony in opposition?
Lori Ortolano?
Yes?
Okay, I'm now officially in opposition, and I'll tell you why. I would like to see a comprehensive plan developed, and I don't think developing a comprehensive plan will cost $400,000. And I'd like to see that done so that we can get a picture of what the big, the total cost of this project is, and whether or not we can really begin funding it or start that work, given where we're going, particularly next year, with the new property assessments and the amount of debt we've taken on. I don't want to authorize $400,000 to do not only the study, but potentially start something that we can't finish. And I also feel we're halfway through the spending year. If we could fund just the study, by the time you're ready to begin developing a new budget in April, you can look at funding this further if it's possible, but I think we're gonna be up against a wall when it comes to spending, and when we know what's coming down the pipe on these new property assessments, which will be out next August. So I'm in opposition to this. Thank you.
Anyone else in opposition? Seeing and hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing on R21-187.
Also before us this evening is R-21-189, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $1,859,440 for various improvements at the Solid Waste Department, Fort Hills Landfill, and the purchase of a refuse truck and wheeled loader.
Hudson, were you going to address it? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Oh, I was sitting in the back.
Yeah.
Jeff LaFleur, Superintendent of Solid Waste.
Okay.
In this resolution, you'll see a lot of big-ticketed items, but they're very important to the landfill. The first two I'll speak to is the continuation of the Phase 3 landfill expansion and the Phase 4 permitting for our landfill airspace. The amounts there are for engineering of the expansions and the new permit for Phase 4. This will get us all the way through to construction. DES has been giving us a real hard time trying to get the Phase 4 permitted, so this will be for the engineering and answering questions for DES and public hearings when that finally comes to fruition. Recycling area upgrades is another big ticket there. Our recycling area, I don't know how many of you have come to our landfill, but it is starting to deteriorate very, very quickly. We need to do some repairs there. Pavement, some buildings are starting to fall apart. We want to make it safe for our residents. The wheel loader that we're asking for in this is a very intricate piece of equipment at the landfill. It's very much needed. It ships all of our equipment. We load all of our recycling. We haul all our daily cover to cover our landfill. And then the refuse truck is one of our CNG side load trucks that is needed to collect recycling and trash.
Any questions from the Alderman? Thank you. Seeing none, I'll open the public testimony for testimony in favor.
Lori Ortolano?
Ms. Orlano?
Yes, can you just tell me what the cost of the vehicle is relative to between the projects? I'm just wondering what the split is.
The class of vehicle?
No, the cost. This is
Cost.
1.8 million, and it's for various projects with the landfill as well as a vehicle. What's the vehicle cost?
Jeff LaFleur, Superintendent of Solid Waste. The refuse truck that we're purchasing is $423,990.
And was that, so was that separate? That wasn't a SURF item. It's here being proposed because it wasn't proposed in the SURF budget?
No, it's proposed as part of our SURF, but the city decides to bond some of our equipment since they're such highly priced.
Okay, I gotcha.
And just to answer the first part of your question, I am getting a wheel loader, the large wheel loader, and that's $485,450.
Okay.
All set?
Yeah, I just think that, that might be something we should have budgeted in the regular budget. That's just my, my feeling on the.
So the items are in SURF, and some of the items, especially larger items in SURF, we have recently gone out and bonded with a low bonding rate.
Okay.
Also, all of these cost items are in the legislation.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna talk again, because I'll stay in the I favorite column. I'm not changing my mind.
Okay, any other testimony in favor? Seeing none, testimony in opposition? Seeing none, once again, testimony in favor? And once again, testimony in opposition? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on R21-189.
Also before us this evening is R-21-193, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $21 million to fund architectural, engineering, surveying, construction, and other related work for the design and construction of a river walk adjacent to the Nashua River near Main Street.
Okay? Yes, Director Cummings, would you like to come up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Should I just take a seat?
Yes.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. I put a quick slide deck together to help organize my thinking this evening. I'm just going to quickly share my screen so it can come up in front of everyone. So again, I'm here before you this evening looking for authorization for $21 million for the implementation of the Downtown Riverfront Plan. And before I begin my comments, I think 2 points I want to make right off the bat, because I heard some earlier testimony. First and foremost, this project has been discussed here at the Board of Aldermen. In fact, it was discussed with the Infrastructure Committee this fall. And it has come up regularly over the last few years. And then secondly, the monies used for this project are coming from the TIF district. And you can only use these monies within the district. And so therefore, I just want to be clear that outside of the TIF district, no one would be supporting or paying for the cost of this project. This was a strategy that was implemented by the city very early on when we endeavored to take on this type of revitalization project. And I'll get into a little bit more of that as we continue here. So the genesis for the project. So if everyone recalls, we actually undertook a development plan. We did some significant outreach throughout 2016, and then we adopted this plan in 2017. And this was really an effort undertaken by Director Marchand, and she led a robust public engagement initiative. And we had a lot of community outreach, and it really set the priorities that the folks who wanted to see the downtown river used differently outlined their priorities, outlined their thoughts, and we tried to capture those sentiments in this document. And essentially what we're here today to do is to implement that vision. But before I go down that path, I want to just take a moment and say that this has been a long-term plan that I have heard about that the city has endeavored to do. In fact, when I interviewed for this position, Brian McCarthy and I, during my interview, spent a long time talking about mill cities and how mill cities really needed to use their riverfront as a value proposition, as a natural asset that these mill cities had that could be used as part of a revitalization strategy to redevelop their downtown. And it was, in those types of conversations that started way back in 2016 that helped, Director Marchand and I develop the plan that is, again, what we're using as our guidepost. And so what does this plan ultimately capture? It talks about multimodal connectivity, access to the river, recreation, green space, environmental stewardship, environmental floodplain resiliency, environmental stewardship, and economic development. So we, after the plan was developed, we started with design. And we put together a project team. We have VHB, Halverson Design, Hayner Swanson, H.L. Turner, Fitzmyer Tachi, and actually tomorrow we'll be interviewing construction managers. And hopefully a selection will be made sometime in the month of December and a contract sometime in January so we can continue on with our timeline. But Halverson Design has been with us from the beginning. They actually were the landscape architect that led the planning initiative back in 2016, 2017. So the project area, so the plan talked about 4 different quadrants. We're really focusing on quadrants 2 and 3 of the plan, and it's basically the parkway, the Veterans Memorial Parkway, formerly known as the Broad Street Parkway, all the way to BAE. And if you can see my cursor here, it's really the pedestrian, what we refer to as the pedestrian Pan Am bridge. So resolution 2193 before you tonight is a resolution seeking bond authorization for $21 million to implement the riverfront plan as described and to be considered a TIF project. The project before you will be utilizing TIF funds generated through the TIF program, and only TIF dollars will be used for this project. So I just want to make that abundantly clear, because I think there might have been some confusion about that. So one thing I do want to talk about is the focus and the priority. So the focus and the priority will be the west side of the river, from Main Street Bridge to the Parkway Bridge. Due to the construction climate that we're in, currently I'm not inclined to commit the entire project as presented, but we'll take a phased approach. And whatever available budget we have, and in consultation with the construction manager, we'll focus on doing projects on the east side of the river. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So we're looking at a $21 million project. We have about soft costs of about 4.5 million, hard construction target of 15 million. We have a contingency of 1.5 million, which is the $21 million. The project that we have conceptualized that I'm about to go through is above this $21 million figure. We will do the best we can to get as much for the community as it can within the budget that we're allotted. But the construction climate that we have right now has been very challenging, to say the least. I sent a communication to this body a few weeks ago pointing out that construction prices are going up, and it's very hard to forecast right now. So I would recommend taking a little bit more of a conservative approach, and then once we understand where we actually have available budget, we look to add on some of the projects that I'll be talking about. So here's the list of the projects that was identified in the plan. As you can see, a Pine Street extension crossing of about $40,000, Factory Street extension improvements, which is $862,000, Parkdale Renaissance, a $4 million project, Water Street improvements at $310,000, Boardwalk at 4 Water Street, $1.76 million, Bicentennial Park improvements at $583,000, Boardwalk Riverside Barbecue at $1.7 million, shared use path in between at $125,000, substation screening at $180,000, Boardwalk and dock $1.37 million, existing shared path improvements $230,000, Cotton Mill ADA ramp $576,000. That is one of the projects that I believe our city engineer, Mr. Hudson, had mentioned that earlier that I would be talking about. That's a project that we need to prioritize to ensure that we get it done. A pathway around BAE is $600,000. Construct a shared path at 60 Main Street, which is $530,000. Widen the existing ramp that's there, $130,000. Boardwalk around 60 Main Street, $1.3 million. Lighting at $700,000, and then a pedestrian bridge. So one of the things that we discovered as we started design, originally we wanted to rehabilitate the Pan Am pedestrian crossing that's currently in existence, and so we were thinking we would use the existing bridge that's there. As we studied that initiative over the last couple of years, it became apparent that the life of that is too far gone, and it would be wiser and more efficient for us over a lifespan of the project, actually, for us to put a brand new pedestrian bridge in. So we're providing for that at $1.7 million. So I'm just gonna quickly just go back here, because I think I skipped over timeline, and I wanna make sure I catch that. So I put a quick timeline in that kind of shows the master planning effort that took place in 2016 through 2017. Then we, as a community, decided if we wanted to pursue this initiative, we really needed to adopt a TIF. And so that's what we did in 2018, 2019, very early on. So nothing that we're talking about here today is new. We've been discussing this for quite a while. And then preliminary design, we've been doing preliminary design for about 2 years now. And one of the reasons why is because we had to go through a lot of federal permitting process to be able to work within the waterway. And that was a year and a half on its own. So moving forward, hopefully we get bond authorization in 2021. We will continue with design, which should be about 6 months worth of work. In '22, we would look to start construction in '22, and final design is modeled for somewhere in '24, '25. So this is a long-term project. We won't see this project conclude until somewhere around 2025, maybe a little earlier, but that really depends on how our construction manager develops their schedule. So going back to what I was just talking about here, what I'm highlighting is red is what I would be recommending we commit to, and that's just about $12 million in cost. And so that is the $40,000 crosswalk on Pine Street Extension, doing the improvements around and behind Clock Tower at just under $900,000, doing the Parc de la Renaissance, which has been the gem that everyone has been discussing up till now, which is a big part of the initiative at about $4 million. Water Street improvements at $310,000. Boardwalk around 4 Water Street at $1.76 million. Bicentennial Park improvements at just under $600,000. Boardwalk around Riverside Barbecue at $1.7 million. And again, I just want to remind everyone, the city of Nashua embraced this idea of doing these cantilevered boardwalks back in the early 2000s. And in fact, this initiative of trying to connect the riverfront through these boardwalks started with Peddler's Daughter that is currently in existence. And so this is just a continuation of that vision that started back in, I would say 15 or 20 or so years ago, just a little less than 20 years, because I know a bond was issued on that for about $1 million. And I don't believe that's due to expire until 2024 or thereabouts. So then with that being said, we would be continuing on with the shared use park at $125,000, substation screening at $180,000, boardwalk and the dock around Parc de la Renaissance at $1.37 million, existing shared path improvements at $200,000, and again, that Cotton Mill ADA ramp at just under $600,000. Then once we see how we're standing, so everything that I'm presenting before you right now in red, we have a healthy contingency built into that, as well as we have a separate contingency at $1.5 million. But as I said, I'm very conservative in my approach here. Once we actually start the project, have more design done, we will have a better understanding as to where we would have available budget. And where we do have available budget, I'd be recommending we continue on with the yellow, which is basically the east side of Main Street, particularly prioritizing the pedestrian bridge at $1.7 million, and then looking to do the other improvements. So I'm just going to quickly walk around here so people can see what I'm talking about. Starting here, here's Riverside Barbecue. We would be putting a boardwalk in and along through here. And we got a connection right to here. This would be the shared use path. Then we'd have another boardwalk that would go in front of the substation. We'd be looking to screen the substation. We have an existing path right here, but we'd be looking to make some improvements, particularly adding lighting. This whole project contemplates the addition of lighting throughout the whole area to improve upon it. Then we have the ADA ramp that was discussed right in through here. Here's the Cotton Mill Transfer Bridge. Here's that crossing that we're talking about here. Making improvements along Factory Street, behind Clock Tower, this alleyway here. Making the major improvements along Parc de la Renaissance. Making improvements with it, again, another boardwalk behind the Water Street building, connecting on up to Bicentennial. So I'll walk through some images to kind of show you what's been designed thus far. So this would be Bicentennial. One of the reasons why we're looking to do this is because technically right now Bicentennial Park is not ADA compliant. Again, another issue that our city engineer was representing that I would talk about. We would look to be making this ADA compliant. How are we going to do that? Well, right here, folks may not realize that there's a significant grade difference from when you're at Main Street as compared to when you get down to the bottom of the green space. And technically right now, all you can do is go straight down basically how my cursor is traversing the screen. We would be adding in a new pathway around, which, again, is meeting grade compliance for ADA and particularly people with mobility issues. So then we have the boardwalk around Water Street, for Water Street here, so very similar. Everything here has been modeled after what was done over at Peddler's Daughter, looking to do the same thing. Here's kind of an image of what Parc de la Renaissance would look like if you were coming in off of 4 Water Street. Here's the idea of the connectivity down to the floating dock. You're coming in off of 4 Water Street or Parc de la Renaissance. Here's the new image of what Parc de la Renaissance would look like from this view. Here's what it would look like from the other side. Again, currently, a lot of this is parking in through here, so we'd be removing a lot of that parking. We'd be looking to introduce it up here onto Water Street, basically create this green space that people would be able to use as passive recreation. And also the thought process is this right here could be used as a nice little area, and you could do some informal type of performances right here. It kind of acts as like an amphitheater of sorts. Here's another view of what that would look like, just to kind of show folks what we're talking about. So Water Street reconfiguration, again, goes part and parcel with doing this Parc de la Renaissance project. We would be looking to introduce one-way flow along Main Street here. We would not lose any parking down here, which currently is where it exists. We would actually be looking to add it in on street. What does happen is Water Street would no longer be two-way. It would only be one-way from Main Street to Factory Street. Then when you get to Factory Street, you could make a left or a right. We're also talking about an addition of parking onto Factory Street right here with parking that actually we tested this summer to see how it would do. And then ultimately, if you wanted to go down, if you wanted to go north on Main Street, we would be looking to go left, and you'd be able to go left down Factory Street and onto Main Street. Now, what folks may be asking themselves is, without being able to make a left here and a left here, is that going to cause any type of impact? And so I will tell you right now, you will be losing the ability to make a left out here onto Main Street, but you'd be pushing it all onto Factory Street. We believe it can be accommodated, but without question, there will be some folks who won't like the queuing that will occur. We don't believe it will queue past here, and it would be actually a more efficient use of the space, but nonetheless, there is that convenience right now of having this be two-way. I fully recognize that, but we're not going to be able to accommodate everything. If we've been designing this under the direction that folks wanted to keep the parking, and that's exactly what we're doing. If we were to remove this parking, you would be able to have that two-way flow, but that's not the recommendation at this time. So here's just another look at what Parc de la Renaissance looks like at an aerial view of how it would be transformed. Here's a closer look at the dock. So how the dock would work is we would be coming in off of the new boardwalk here, and there'd be basically a switchback right here. There'd be a landing on terra firma here, some sort of gangplank out, and then the dock down. And the idea would be for it to be accessible for kayaks and whatnot. So here's the improvements that we're talking about. What we refer to as the Factory Street improvements. This is behind Clock Tower. Here's the existing condition that's out here. What we'd be looking to do is add in some curbing on either side. We'd be adding in some bollards. We'd be screening. We'd be basically trying to make this more of a pedestrian realm. We'll be adding lighting. So trying to create a more comfortable type of environment, so people will use this. And again, the idea would be to connect people walking from Mine Falls to the downtown through this type of multimodal accommodation. Here's a view of what the boardwalk would look like off of Riverside Barbecue. Again, mirroring very similar to what is what was done outside Peddler's Daughter. And then continuing on and connecting up onto terra firma and the existing path that's out there right now. So that's essentially what this project would be, and then what I'm about to talk to you guys about is what I would like to endeavor us to continue on doing when we have a better sense of the budget, and to stay within the budget of the $21 million, which first and foremost, we would be, just to orientate people here, here's the Jackson Falls condominiums, here's the Peddler's Daughter. We would be starting right in about here with a new path in and around BAE, where people would be able to walk. Then here is the new pedestrian bridge that we were talking about adding in. We would essentially be looking to decommission. Now, this is not owned by the city. The city has a lease on this. This is owned by Pan Am. Pan Am would still use it for its freight rail, but we would just be discouraging any type of walking across this bridge, and we would be encouraging people to use this bridge, creating a better experience along here by paving it. There is an existing path right now, but it's rather basic or non-paved, and it would need to be enhanced. And then we would be looking to make another improvement here by widening the ramp, connecting it up, because there's a big grade change. Here's the dam, so if you recall, so here's the grade change here to here. And then we would do another boardwalk around 60 Main Street, which is the Telegraph building. So here's the widening of the ADA ramp that we were talking about, that's currently narrow. Here's the existing, here's what would be the new path that we'd be looking to create by BAE. That again would connect, give full connectivity. And so the new pedestrian bridge concepts that we would be looking to implement, here's just to kind of give you an idea of what we would be doing. And here's what it would look like actually installed. So that's basically the project at hand that we've been working on over the last couple of years and bringing to design. We are concluding preliminary design now. We'd be rolling into final design just after the new year, trying to get under construction for the summer of 22. So relative to the debt schedule and TIF revenue, and Treasurer for Debt is here, and he can go through the model in more detail, but essentially, we will need to generate just over $1 million to cover the level principal and level interest on a 30-year bond. Just want to note, everything that we're doing here has a life expectancy of 50+ years. We're talking about boardwalks and major infrastructure. And then we would have an interest rate modeled at 2.75%. I have often told Treasurer for Debt that I think that that's extremely conservative, but I understand why we're doing that. And then the TIF dollars generated, so to date, we have about $1 million in the account. We've modeled that we will have a growth of conservatively 2.5 year over year. We'll end with 2.2 million, and this leaves us enough room to also maintain and have maintenance done year over year for this area. So I don't know if folks have noticed over the last couple of years, but we've actually made a concerted effort of landscaping and removing trees, doing a lot of vegetation removal, getting rid of invasive species, really trying to open up the riverfront to make it enjoyable. A lot of people have remarked that they didn't even realize that there was a river there. So we'd be looking to maintain it as we go forward, and we've built that into the model. I believe Treasurer for Debt put this together for you. I can defer to him, but essentially it goes through in detail what I just discussed, which is a 30-year horizon here. We have a beginning balance of 1.1 million. We have what will be generated with TIF revenue. We have level payments of $1,037,000. And then we'll have available balance throughout the entire TIF schedule. I will send this off to everyone. If they so desire, I can email it out. I don't know if there's anything that Treasurer Fredette wants to say on that, but that concludes my comments that I have this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Treasurer Fredette, did you have anything you wanted to add, or?
It wasn't done on purpose.
Yeah, that's probably the best I can.
Have some hard copies here if anybody wants them. Unless,
Just introduce yourself for the,
Okay, Dave Fredette, City Treasurer, Tax Collector. As Director Cummings said, hold on, yeah, but I need something like that. As Director Cummings said, we ran this through 30 years, and of course, no one can project 30 years out, but we do the best we can. We start off with fiscal year '22 and what's in, balance in the TIF account. As you know, the tax revenue raise, or a portion of the tax revenue raise in the TIF goes into this account each year. And I have that growing, as he said, by 2.5% each year. And maintenance costs, this year it's high because they've done a lot. They started last year, they did a lot of work, but starting in '23 would be 260,000. It would go up each year by another 2.5%. So it shows the ending balance each year, what would be in that account, becoming the beginning balance the next year, the expenses that are planned, and it shows a balance each year. So although it shows going down to around, the lowest around 270,000, at the end of 30 years, the account would be, if everything goes according to plan, would have around $6 million in it, which could be used, I guess, for another bond, is my guess. We used a 2.75% interest rate, and we also have the revenue and the maintenance costs increasing each year by 2.5%. We did something like this similar for the paving program. The paving program is a $37.5 million bond over a period of years, and that has revenue that pays for that from two sources. And we budgeted all that very conservative, and that's turned out to be good too, because the rates on those sales have been lower, so we've been able to do more on that project. 2.75 is definitely is conservative right now, but I don't know what's gonna happen in a couple of years. We plan to sell the bonds in fiscal year '23, and possibly some of it in '24. We don't know yet. So, anyways, that's the plan, to pay off the bond.
okay. Any Alderman have questions for Director Cummings or Treasurer Fredette? Alderman Wilshire?
I just have a question. If someone could explain the TIF a little bit so the public understands what the TIF is?
Yeah, happy to.
Thank you.
But essentially what a TIF is tax increment financing, which you have the base level taxation, which goes to the general fund, and then the increment that is above a development is captured, segregated, and set aside for specific projects or specific priorities as outlined by the community. And that is what we did with basically it's the Brady Sullivan Lost 34 project that we used as the main genesis of where these revenues are coming from. We very astutely knew that project was, because it was an empty mill building, was going to have an increment, and we could capture that increment and then dedicate it to the improvement of the riverfront for the entire city.
Any other questions? Alderman Kelly?
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the presentation. That was really helpful. My question, actually, I was really appreciative of the discussion around kind of taking a slow approach to this. In the previous meeting, I had asked about what are we doing for contingencies because materials are going out. So I just wanted to make sure I understood. It sounded like 50 million what you're asking for, but you're going to only start with that 11.8 million and see where you're at before you go and continue with any of the additional projects. Is that correct?
So the red highlighted shows what the current construction costs are that we've modeled, what we've designed, what we've gotten back. We won't know when we put it out to bid, which, you know, the construction manager will do ideally sometime this spring. And any time between now and then, the numbers could increase, but we have contingencies built into the project. So I don't believe it will. What it will do is we will, as we continue with design and we get a better understanding of what the available, what the project, the individualized project costs are, it will tell us what would be available that we could then reallocate to maybe some of the other priorities that we're just not gonna be able to get to. Because to be able to make this budget work, we need to stay under 21 million, just with the current estimates that we have. And really, it's because we just wrapped up preliminary design. We know that we need to carry a good contingency, but we expect that contingency to go down once we get through final design.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing on R21-193. Testimony in favor. Testimony in opposition.
Lori Ortolano?
I see Mr. Richardson first.
You have to unmute, Dan.
You're mute.
Thank you very much. Dan Richardson, 70 Berkeley Street, Nashua, New Hampshire. I'm generally disposed to not believe that this is a very good approach. Apart from the artistic impressions that we've revealed, giving maintenance a nightmare with the segmented green spaces and at different elevation levels, you're going to have a terrible time maintaining this. I noticed several areas where were inaccessible. They said ADA compliant. There's several areas that were inaccessible to people that are immobile or non-ambulatory. Besides that, I understand the present low bond rates would prompt one to want to borrow as much money as you can at the present time. I understand that philosophy in one shot, but that's not actually what happens. You get the bonding authority and money is borrowed in segments over time as it's needed, so that you don't have to have excess amount of taxes covering the debt service. So the real problem I have with this is the usage of TIF. TIF is fundamentally unfair to the rest of the community. And I gotta tell you, the reason why is because it's established in state law, state statutes, how this works. There's no means in state statutes of segregating inflation from the true increase in the valuation of the property. All things being equal, if there was no inflation, you would be able to find an increase in valuation ostensibly attributable to the increase in property values in that district. However, that there is no such provision in law, and you have no means established to do that. So that's a true problem. It causes an increase in valuation due to inflation, which causes an increase in taxes from that valuation increase. And that is fundamentally captured, used only in the TIF district. And that's unfair to the rest of the city. It produces an excess amount of money for use only in that area. And what ends up happening is when people see an excess amount of money, they tend to increase the scope of a project beyond what it is ostensibly for. So I am against the use of a TIF district for financing this. I think what you ought to do is have general obligation bonds and just straight up borrow the money as you need for the project segments.
30 seconds.
For the particular annual budget. Thank you very much.
Anyone else in opposition?
Lori Ortolano,
Ms. Ortolano?
41 Berkeley Street. Mr. Cummings started this presentation off by saying he's had numerous presentations with the board and other committees. Can you tell me the last presentation you had with which board? What board was that?
Director Cummings, do you?
Sure, it was, with the Board of Aldermen, it was the Infrastructure Committee, and I'm gonna say it was in September, off the top of my head, but I'm sure you could go back to the meeting minutes and look, I don't know.
Yes, the meeting was in March 24th of 2021, was your meeting on the Riverwalk project with the Infrastructure Committee. And you are not on the agenda in September, October, or August. And in that meeting, you said that you would like to come back to either this committee or the entire board. And on the Board of Aldermen minutes, I have a specific search engine I can use. The last time Riverwalk was discussed was 2019. I feel it's inappropriate for you to do a presentation of this nature at 9:30 at night and then roll into a budget committee to approve a bond of this size. This should have been vetted before the full board, and the community should have an opportunity to discuss this. I have a lot of questions, and I'm with Dan on this. I don't like the TIF funding on this, and I don't like what I see going on with the TIF funding, because it's not fair to the rest of the community. At the end of the meeting, Alderman O'Brien said that there would be future meetings, that we would get together with the committee that Dave Tenza is on, and we would be able to work more on ideas to move this project forward. That joint meeting I can't find either. So there is very little history on this. The community has had very little information, and it almost seems like you and the mayor have been working more quietly behind closed doors to push this forward. And I don't see how TIF funding means it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything, because we're bonding $21 million here. And, you know, you're gonna close Water and Factory Street for a period of time to do work. How exactly is that gonna work when you put barriers up on Main Street for 3 years? That's
30
another
seconds.
issue that needs to be addressed. So this should be tabled. I hope the goal is not to get this approved before a new Board of Aldermen seats or spend this kind of money. I'm asking the Budget Committee to table this, take it to the full board, hold some more meetings, and I would like another public hearing on this when we have more information and can ask more questions. Thank you.
Director Cummings?
Thank you. Again, I just want to reiterate, we were before the Infrastructure Committee, and I don't have the date in front of me, but, you know, September, off the top of my head, early fall, late summer, where we discussed this because we had a conversation at length about Water Street. So I don't have the time to go through the minutes, but I can tell you that we had that conversation. I wasn't alone. It was with other members of the Infrastructure Committee.
Is there anyone else that'd like to speak in opposition?
Laura Cahoon.
Ms. Cahoon?
Laura Coon, 30 Greenwood Drive. First of all, Mr. Cummings gave this same presentation in March of 2021 and never mentioned $21 million. I also find that the TIF program is stealing from the general fund to give it into the TIF area, therefore screwing the Nashua taxpayers. This is something that should be brought up in front of all the residents of Nashua, that we should see this, because $21 million for another downtown project is absolutely ridiculous. You also have to realize between the PAC, the new school, and now this, how much more do you people want us to pay? We have inflation coming up, and Mr. Cummings doesn't even live in Nashua, where he's putting all these things in, and I think that the residents have a right to say whether they want this to go down or not. So I'm asking you to table this. I thank you.
Anyone else want to speak in opposition? Seeing no one, I'll go back to testimony in favor. Seeing no one, again, testimony in opposition.
Lori Ortolano?
Yes, Ms. Ortolano?
A question. Why did Director Cummings decide that now is the time to take on a $21 million project?
Director Cummings?
Yeah, thank you. I actually would have liked to take it on a year or so ago. Unfortunately, it took us over a year to get through FEMA permitting, so we could actually move this along. I would suggest a 2-year phase of being within preliminary design is much too long. However, that's what we had to go through to be able to get to the project to the point that we're in. And I'm trying to move this along as fast as possible.
All
Well, I
set?
think you need to consider what we can afford and what's been proposed, because while you were working hard to get that permitting, I understand, there were other bonds that came up and got approved, like our DPW facility, as well as some other big projects. We just did a massive amount of capital. And we're in a different time period now with some new assessment numbers coming out next year. So I think the timing of this is not correct. And I think this has been done very underhanded and backdoor. There has not been enough open vetting of this, and the discussions at the Board of Aldermen table have not taken place since 2019. This should not be voted on now. Thank you.
Anyone else in opposition? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing on R21-193. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion that the December 7th, 2021 special meeting of the Board of Aldermen be adjourned by roll call.
Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
No.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou.
Yes.
Alderman Jenny.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver.
Yes.
Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Yes.
And Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
You have 13 yeas and 1 nay.
Motion passes, and we are adjourned at 9:38. Let's do a 3-minute break, and then we'll go right into the budget meeting.
Alderman at Large Laurie Wilshire.
Here.
Alderman Ernest Jettie.
Elite.
All,
Maybe still still
okay.
breaking.
I guess Alderman Jettie is present, but we'll re-ask him when he gets here. Alderman Jan Smith is absent. Alderman at Large Ben Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I am here, participating via Zoom because of work commitments, and there is no one in the room with me.
And our chairman, Alderman Richard A. Dowd.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have 4 members present in the chamber, 1 on Zoom, and expecting the arrival of Alderman Jettie soon.
All right, we have a quorum. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Everybody's been here to hear what was said in the public hearing. So if you have something that wasn't brought up before, you're welcome to come up and give public comment. On any of the subjects on the agenda this evening. But please don't have it go over stuff that you've already presented.
Nope, this will be brand new things to address some of the misstatements that were made. One was with respect, this is Robert Lodi, 12 Bartlett Ave, and speaking with respect to R21202. It was addressing the housing issue and that this would free up housing. It doesn't address housing. The homes are going to be between 600 and 750,000. The source of that is Lloyd Geisinger, president of Thorndike. He told us there's 44 homes, not 43. So when we look at the housing and you look at the median income in the city of Nashua, $79,000 a year for a household. You need to make $160,000 a year to be able to afford one of these homes that'll be put in that development if you choose not to pass Measure R21202. So the homes will be for people outside Nashua. It'll be an enclave unto itself, not accessible to citizens of Nashua, and it will destroy the essence of the park for the benefit of those who don't live in the city. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else has anything public comment?
Yes, Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street.
Yes, Ms. Orlando?
With regard to affordable housing, I just want to be clear that this was never presented as an affordable housing project. And while the median, income might be 78,000, that means 50% of the income levels are above that level. And yes, believe it or not, there is a market for higher end housing, and it will do something to support it. And I don't know what this concern is that it's, the mayor said at the meeting at the church that perhaps 50% of the people who moved in there would move in from Massachusetts. But guess what? A lot of people move up here from Massachusetts. And the other 50% would come from around this area or New Hampshire. I don't know why we feel so confident that we know who's gonna buy these places, because I don't think we do. And I don't think it's our call. The call here is to let the planning board do their job and vet this development the way it should be vetted. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else for public comment?
Yes, Alex Moe, 4 Lewis Street. Just real quick to echo some of the stuff that Lori
Hang on,
said.
who's speaking?
Alex Mo, 4 Lewis Street.
You haven't been identified yet. We have someone speaking in the chamber.
Okay.
Thank you. Penny Ferreira, 3 Birchwood Drive. I just left out a few facts from the master plan. In 1985, there was 24% of the entire land base in Nashua. Today, it's estimated to be between 6 and 9.5. So another reason to make those bonds available. So if the purchase and sales does fall through for any reason, then we have the money to act. Again, there are other alternatives, and I would ask the city to be open to that. I also think you have listened to so much tonight just on that particular resolution, that I am asking you to table it and take enough time to go back to your constituents, see what they really are willing to pay for. Give us more time. And this is a huge decision that is going to greatly impact every single person in the city because of the use of Greeley Park. So I'm asking you to please consider tabling it. Thank you.
Mr. Como?
Yes, Alex Camaro, 4 Lewis Street. First, I'd like to just real quick apologize to the previous speaker. When I started talking, I didn't see anybody on camera approaching the microphone. Not to go over everything that's already been said again, but basically my opinion on this is that this is a topic best reserved for the planning board, and it should not be a precedent to be set with the Board of Aldermen in the business of interfering with private land sales for the benefit of a few or, due to the opposition of a few. This is the reason why we have a planning board, so they can determine the best proper use for this land. And I just don't believe that the Board of Aldermen should be in the business of interfering with private land use. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Richardson, something new? You're on mute.
Dan Richardson, 70 Berkeley Street, Nashua, New Hampshire. Yes, I just wanted to respond to the thought of tabling it tonight. The Budget Review Committee meets at best once a week and quite frequently, or less frequently than that, depending on the time of year that is. And then following that, the Alderman full board meets every 2 weeks. If you were to table it, it would take another week plus to address it again. If you pass it, there'll be another 2 weeks, perhaps, to address it at the full board. You're easily letting a month slip by. It's time to address it tonight. You can hold things at the full board if necessary, but I urge you to go ahead and give it a recommendation for approval of this bonding authority. Thank you very much.
All right. Anyone else? Seeing none, communications?
Before we get into communications, Mr. Chairman, I got to do a little bit of clerk duty. I did not recognize also in attendance that we have joined by Alderman Lowe. Also in attendance this evening is Corporate Counsel Steve Bolton and City Treasurer David Fredette. All right, communications from Gene Porter. Oh, yes, and Alderman Clee on Zoom. Communications from Gene Porter. Reason R-21-189, purchase of new vehicles for solid waste department.
There being no objection, we'll place that on file, waive the reading. Any other communications?
There is no other communications.
Did we have another communication? No? All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. We do
Yes.
have a communication from Mike Fahey regarding resolution 21-202.
Okay. There being no objection, we'll accept that, place it on file, make part of the record.
May I ask the chair, will that be handed to the clerk or to the assistant? Thank you.
Yeah. Unfinished business?
Before us this evening is...
Unfinished business.
Oh, unfinished. No, there's no unfinished business.
All right, and the new business resolutions, I think so we can allow our corporate attorney to leave. If there are no objections, I'd like to move to address R-21-202.
Okay. All right, before us this evening is R-21-202, authorizing the mayor and city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $2,500,000 to purchase a property abutting Greeley Park, located at 15 Bartlett Avenue, map 57, lot 3. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend tabling the motion. the R-21-202.
Okay, the motion before us is to table R 21-202. It's non-debatable. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderwoman Kelly?
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yea. Alderman Wilshire?
Yes.
Alderman Jettie?
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons?
No.
Alderman Dowd?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 yeas, 1 nay.
R 21-202 is tabled.
Okay, also before us this evening is R-21-187, changing the purpose of up to $440,000, $225 of unexpended bond proceeds from LED light project to infrastructure improvements, sidewalk construction for the design, repair, and construction of sidewalks. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Okay. Before we do that, did you want to stay or? All right. So the motion on the floor is the final passage of R 21-187. Any discussion? Alderman Kelly?
I know we've had a lot of discussion tonight, but I'm excited to see us working on our sidewalks. It's something that we need to continue doing and growing in our city, so.
Yeah, I know that city engineer has gone to great lengths to fix some of our really damaged sidewalks where people can get hurt, especially elderly or handicapped. So, any other? Oh, I had Alderman Lou, then Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to comment that there are lots of heavily traveled streets in my ward that need work, and I'm sure in many wards. My concern is that it seems to me we have a process where the committee on Capital Improvement Committee prepares a list yearly according to their, their report. And I'd like to know that a list that's been, discussed at those meetings would be priorities on this work. Thank you.
Dr. Hudson, are you're still on, right?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair.
Has any of that been, did you hear Alderman Lou?
Yeah, I did. Every year we've included a CIC request for sidewalk funding. I believe last year there was a small amount of funding approved, but in years past it hasn't been. So yeah, it is. We have been regularly requesting funding for sidewalks so we can do a better job of making improvements.
All set? Follow-up?
Just a follow-up, please. What I was saying is that the CIC report states that those sidewalks in need of repair are ranked yearly. I wasn't speaking of the funding or the budgeting, but is that ranking, is that, evaluation done yearly?
So no, as I explained earlier, we don't even have a complete inventory or assessment of all the sidewalk we have. So this funding will enable us to do that, and then we can do that ranking that's being requested, and try to prioritize where funds should be directed first.
Okay, thank you.
Because I think the discussion's come up many times in regard to when we're talking street paving, and in many instances around the city, they talk about sidewalks being in need of repair, and we never seem to have enough money in the budget to cover the sidewalk repair, and to me, that's a safety issue. We're not talking about replacing already good sidewalks, we're talking about sidewalks that, you know, you've got cement that's out of place or holes in tar or. Any other questions? Alderman O'Brien.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and if you will allow me the privilege, I'm gonna have a little fun with this, but if I can ask through the chair to corporate counsel. We do spend a lot of money in our sidewalks and everything, but as people do know, the citizens are not responsible really to shovel them. Yet they come up and occasionally different people in different neighborhoods come up and ask us to put into sidewalks. And I came from where I originally lived down in the Boston area. You were responsible to shovel your particular sidewalk as a good particular neighbor. But it seems to be, I don't know whether it's the New Hampshire way. So my question to corporate counsel, whenever we appropriate money for sidewalks, is this the proper time to revisit that and to look at that old Supreme Court case? Or is that something the legislature needs to do? And I don't see the good people up in Franconia worrying about Nashua sidewalks.
I think you're alluding to the fact that there's a long-standing New Hampshire Supreme Court decision that says the clearing of snow from sidewalks is a responsibility of the municipality and cannot be delegated to individual property owners. That's New Hampshire law. Whether the legislature would be in a position to change that is debatable, but certainly the Board of Aldermen cannot change it.
All set, Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah, well, just a follow-up, it duly noted, one of the things that did come up is looking at the wear and tear and replacing vehicles that we do for the sidewalks, which I think is grand, and I'm glad that Nashua does do it. I hate to see somebody who is not able-bodied to do it, but it is one of those New Hampshire anomalies, I guess, so there you go.
Alderman Kelly?
I think sidewalks can be a very passionate subject, so I'll try to keep it very focused on what we can do at Budget Committee. I'd love to see us have a bigger conversation potentially with infrastructure, but one of the things that I'd love to see us look at maybe next year, and I'd love to hear what Mr. Hudson has to say, is that when a builder builds a new building, they can pay in lieu of a sidewalk, but they don't actually pay enough to put that sidewalk in. So we're constantly putting ourselves at a disservice in terms of adding additional sidewalks in our city.
You agree, Mr. Hudson?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, I do agree. There is a calculation method that's used, and I think it's probably appropriate to update those rates. We found that, sidewalks are fairly expensive to construct, so probably the rates that are being assessed aren't quite equivalent to what it actually costs to do that work nowadays. So we might need an adjustment there.
Any other questions on the motion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes. Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Sent to the full board with recommendation for final passage. Alderman O'Brien.
Also before us this evening is R-21-189, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $1,859,440 for the various improvement at the solid waste department, Four Hills Landfill, and the purchase of a refuge truck and wheel loader. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make I'd like to make the motion to recommend final passage.
Motion on the floor is final passage of R-21-189. Any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes. Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, that motion passes, and we'll go to the full board with our recommendation for final passage.
Also before us this evening is R-21-193, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $21 million to fund the architectural engineering, surveying, construction, and other related work for design and construction of a river walk adjacent to the Nashua River near Main Street. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to recommend final passage.
The motion is to recommend final passage of R 21-193. Are there any comments? Alderman Lou?
I do have a comment. I was thinking about whether a decrease in commercial assessments may make payment of this bond just compromised. I think that the current retained taxes are 1.075 million. I think that's what, Treasurer Fredette? Did I
Treasurer
get
Fredette, can you
Did I
address
get
that?
that right? That the, sorry, the yearly cost is actually I have it on my sheet, sorry, I forgot.
You mean how much revenue is coming in?
How much revenue comes in
About
this year?
$1,050,000 to $1,070,000. 1,050,000 to 1,070,000.
Okay, yeah, and so my concern is that if commercial revenues decreased significantly, then the payment of that annual bond payment service would not be there. And it just seems to me that if we waited, you know, even a month, we'd have a better idea, wouldn't we, of what the commercial tax base had done? So that's my thought. Wondered if we'd have some good, useful information a little bit.
Treasurer Fredette, do you want to address that at all, or?
Tax bills went out and projected will raise $1,070,000 in December, which will go in the TIF account. I understand that because of the reval, commercial, everybody's assessments are gonna change, but I don't think it's gonna affect the income that much coming in.
Okay.
And it's supposed to, as far as I understand, it's supposed to be more development done in that district, that TIF, as time goes on too, so that would bring additional.
Just a
Answer your question?
Well, if I could just ask follow-up, please.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say that it's any decrease in assessed value isn't going to affect the income?
Not necessarily, it depends on how much it gets decreased, because, I'm not saying it's gonna decrease anyway, but the reval is gonna be different for each property, so it may have a slower growth rate than residential, but I don't think it's gonna go down.
Okay, thank you. I only asked that question. I thought that a lot of primarily there are commercial properties in this TIF district. So knowing that, or hearing, not knowing, hearing that the assessments may go down for commercial properties, I wondered if that had been looked at.
I think Director Cummings is here, but I believe there are two big apartment complexes, or maybe even three in this district, and I don't think they're considered commercial. They're residential still. So I would assume that their value is gonna stay pretty good.
Sure.
But hopefully you can.
Director Cummings?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I should begin my comments by saying I believe Alderwoman Lou wanted to talk to me at the end of last meeting. I was actually trying to get something for Alderwoman Kelly, so I will, at the end of this meeting, I'll be happy to chat with you. But to answer your question, I just want to remind folks, actually what we are talking about right now is base taxation, which goes to the general fund. It's the increment that we captured that would go into the TIF. And that is all predicated really on multifamily valuation, the major project being Brady Sullivan.
Okay. Any other questions? Alderwoman Kelly?
Yes, through you to Director Cummings. My question was about, I had asked you in the break about a part of it. So you're in preliminary design right now. If this is approved now, does that preclude us from talking about changes that might stay within this budget as you go into final design?
If I may, Mr.
Director
Chair.
Cummings.
Yeah, as we go into final design through the infrastructure committee, I would be having conversations with them about various elements. And I know you had a particular interest of adding a project, which we studied early on, that if it's the desire to add that in, I would suggest we would have to sub something out on the east side of Main Street to make the budget work, but it's something we could do.
We probably should state to the public what we asked, but
Yeah, I apologize, and to be more clear, what Alderwoman Kelly asked me very specifically is, and she is very accurate to point out that from the Pine Street extension, or, you know, basically where the Veterans Memorial Parkway Bridge is, former Keystone building, down to Clock Tower where the Cotton Mill Transfer Bridge is, that's a very steep grade, and it's actually very challenging for someone, not even with ADA mobility issues, to actually make that grade change. It's something we recognized very early on. We would need to be compliant with the ADA, not go straight up, but do switchbacks. But it's something we did study, and we could absolutely incorporate that into the project to make it, as Alderwoman Kelly pointed out, a better connectivity from Mine Falls to the downtown, which is a goal. And so if that is a project that folks want to continue pursuing, we absolutely can do that. And I would just suggest for us to stay within that 21 million. There would probably be somewhere else that I would suggest we wouldn't actually pursue, but it may be worthwhile to do that instead.
Any chance to get an ADA grant to do that?
Maybe, yeah.
And
Yes.
if I could actually, you are correct, that is one of the pieces my first several years in Nashua, I lived in Clock Tower, which many people have that experience, but that hill is very steep, but also from there all the way through, the Bradshaw building area is not well lit, et cetera. So I was telling him that, you know, you get there and oftentimes you just turn back around. So if we're gonna do this investment, it seems appropriate to connect it to the park in a way that feels safe and lit and all of that. Anyways, the whole point was that I felt like there were conversations and questions from constituents, et cetera, and I just want to make sure that I think this is a great investment. I think we've been talking about it a lot, but if there are questions or concerns from constituents or aldermen, that we're still very much in a phase where we can ask those.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Alderman Clemmons?
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny that you bring up that area, because when I was a teenager, I used to take my bike down there, and there were speed bumps on that road, and we would actually go down and get air and do all sorts of crazy stuff in there. So for us, the hill was a fun fact, but
Not so much if you were in a wheelchair.
no, I wouldn't recommend it at all. So no, but that would be a good investment. But overall, I just wanted to say that I thought some of the public comment was unfair to Director Cummings, and quite frankly to the Infrastructure Committee and the chair. I know that a lot of work has gone into this project, and it has been discussed at various meetings. It wasn't just discussed once. And so, you know, I think we had a public hearing on it tonight. People got to speak about it. They could have spoken about it at the beginning of this meeting. They can speak about it at the Board of Aldermen meeting. It's been discussed in the community. It's been an ongoing thing that's been going on since 2002 or 3 when we started to build the river walk, when we redeveloped over where Peddler's Daughter is. So this isn't a mystery. It's not a mystery, and the folks that are trying to make it out to be one have ill intention, in my opinion. Because they are going after people who have good intentions, who want good things to happen in this city, who want to make sure that we are doing the right thing, making the right decisions, getting the public involved. And then to have outright lies just come out is just, it's just a waste of everyone's time, to be honest with you, because you might as well come to a meeting and just say counter whatever anybody says. Because that's pretty much what it is, you know, and so those folks can do that, that's their right, you know, they can be naysayers, but that's all it really is. And anyway, and I think that the good people that work in this city, and the good people that serve on this Board of Aldermen, don't deserve that, and I just wanted that on the record.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I do have
Alderman
one
Blue?
question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any reason why we wouldn't choose to just bond half of it for now, since it's going to be done in increments anyway? I mean, it's quite a long project, just wondering.
Well, I'll let Treasurer Fredette, but if we authorize the bond, 21 million, that doesn't mean they're gonna sell them tomorrow. They get sold over time when the money is needed. And if for some reason something on the project wasn't done, that money's never, the bond's never sold to cover that, correct? Well, Treasurer Fredette?
Right, and the bond would probably be sold over more than 1 year.
Right. So,
Thank you. I do understand that, and I just feel the bond is only authorized once. Once it's authorized, anyways, thank you, I'm all set.
all right. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes. Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Clement.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, 6 yeas, 0 nays.
That motion passes. It'll be sent to the full board with a recommendation for final passage. New business ordinances,
There are none.
tabled in committee, there's none. General discussion,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Clements.
We're at general discussion, correct?
Right.
Yeah, I just want to state my displeasure in the committee for not allowing debate on the Greeley Park motion. I think that that was a disservice to the public who came here to hear what our opinions are on the matter. I didn't speak during the public hearing because I wanted to talk about what my position on this was. But I didn't speak at the public hearing because I wanted to give the public the opportunity to do so. And, you know, I don't like it when this body stifles debate, and that's exactly what happened at the beginning of this meeting, and I'm not happy about it.
So I don't know, were you here at the beginning of the meeting when it was explained that the developers decided to go forward with the
It
project?
doesn't, quite frankly, it doesn't matter.
Well, there's legal issues. All right,
General discussion?
general discussion.
Yeah, I would just have to say that as my term serving on the Board of Aldermen as a state representative, I am never, ever willfully or maliciously will do anything to jeopardize the law. We are the law. And so therefore, if we cannot get involved with a private deal, I respect that. And I'm sorry, Alderman Clemens, he's a good friend, and I'm sorry he disagrees, but I think we were bound by legal authority to come with this opinion to table. The other thing I would just like to say, that many times during infrastructure, and the other word for infrastructure is basically lands and buildings and other projects. Director Cummings has come before the board. Yes, if you look at the titleage on the agenda, you'll probably see the proper title that, Director Cummings came in and to speak and gave us updates on many different projects. Those of you that paid attention and sitting here at the meetings, usually when I announced the committee meetings, it said also that there would be presentations that Director Cummings would be coming in to speak, whether it be on, the walkway, Riverwalk, or the other thing, the Bridge Street property, projects, and a plethora of a lot of the projects that have been going on. We even discussed the Mohawk Tannery. But keep in mind, nothing was written in legislation, so there was no need for a vote or no need of recommendation to go back to the Board of Aldermen. So therefore, we did have, and I say to Director Cummings, you're welcome to come back to infrastructure at any particular time, because this is the format to keep the people, informed on actually what is happening at the particular. It's sort of like shades of the Jerry Lewis telethon. You miss a little, you miss a lot. So if you miss an infrastructure meeting and we were discussing one of those particular subjects, I'm sorry. But the thing is, I will have to say in defense to Director Cummings, we have discussed that project before, and it has been brought up in the committee. And again, I will continue to do that because it is a good way to let the public know exactly what projects the infrastructure committee and this comes under that we're basically working on. So, thank you.
Public comment?
Alderman Dodds?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. I actually wanted to express that I felt similarly about the conversation around the purchase of the Greeley Park piece. I wanted us to open it up so we could at least discuss why we were tabling it and what reason. I felt like we didn't really explain that to the public. So I would love to hear from Corporation Counsel if possible, as in terms of why we legally cannot touch it right now. And then I also had a question for that who just left, but let's start there.
It's never been my opinion that you were required to table it. I've expressed that opinion to no one.
My second question was to Treasurer Fredette in terms of issuing a bond for something we are unable to buy. I always thought we generally issue a bond when we have something we are actually going to purchase. And not just
Well,
intention to
let me
purchase.
say this. I think that would be a better method. I think having an actual price but in many construction projects, you provide the source of funding before you know the exact dollar amount. But in terms of purchasing property, I think it's more commonly done when you do have a agreement to buy the property. And I think that would have been a more orderly process in this case. But you weren't required to take the action you did tonight. So if you wanted to enter into negotiations with the purchaser, prospective purchaser of the property, nothing would prohibit that. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that. I'm not recommending it be done. I'm just saying it could be done.
But two things. One, if he has told us flat out that he's not interested in selling it to us and the buyer's not interested in selling it to us, and they have a valid purchase and sale, if we try to inflect a competing bid, isn't that a violation?
No. We talked about this today, you and I, and I told you, if you're trying to induce someone to breach a contract, that is tortious interference, and that's actionable. But just someone who has a purchase and sale agreement to buy a piece of property, you can make that person an offer to buy that contract from him or to purchase the property after he acquires it. There is absolutely nothing illegal, nothing tortious about doing that. That could be done. Again, I'm not recommending you take that action, but I have never told anyone, and I specifically did not tell you, that there would be anything wrong with keeping your options open.
Okay. Next item is public comment. I don't see anybody online either, so none. Remarks by Alderman? None? We don't need a non-public. Do I hear a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn by roll call.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes. Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
That's 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, and we are adjourned at 10:25.